Chapter 1486. The Divine Tool, the sword to send you safely on your way, fell from Yi Ling's hand. All of the spectating disciples and elders thought that Yi Ling had been severely wounded, which was why the weapon had fallen from her hand. There was nothing wrong with this speculation. However, Lin's expression became unprecedentedly grave. Sure enough, in the next instant, the sword to send you safely on your way began to move on its own. A silvery white light flashed as it advanced at a speed so fast that even Lin was unable to keep up. Seeking wasn't he just looking for Lin? He was using his divine tool to track down Lin through the connection between him and his disciple. Almost without hesitation, he immediately used his 6 divine fires, including a holy fire. They formed layers of barriers that protected him. However, to his surprise, the divine tool suddenly disappeared right before it came into contact with the holy flames. In the next instant, all of the hairs on his body stood up on end. The divine tool dagger had appeared right in front of his face. The blade of the dagger was right before his eyes, and a chill ran down his spine. The blood that Yi Ling had spat onto his face was emitting faint energy fluctuations, which were none other than the latent energy that could drastically enhance the power of a divine tool. So the blood she spat onto my face was also a foreshadowing? And Lin finally came to a realization in that instant. Yi Ling had told him that the divine tool didn't belong to her. Instead, it belonged to Lin. She was most likely trying to use seeking and to return the divine tool to its rightful owner. Even though this was probably the most refreshing method of returning an item he had ever seen. She was returning the divine tool to send him on his way. That's right. This was the sword to send you safely on your way. And Lin was about to be sent safely on his way by this sword. Whoosh! A silvery white light flashed through the air. It then flashed through the sky like a shooting star. All of the disciples only saw a flash of white light before Lin's body fell backward. All of them widened their eyes in shock, and all of the female disciples turned pale with fright. Sect leader Lin. It's over. Was his head blasted open? There's no way he can survive after having his head pierced through by a divine tool. Wah! God finally came back to life. Is he going to die again? The disciples either sighed or cried bitterly, until Lin turned his head and glanced snappily at the spectating disciples in the distance. Please, can you guys not be so dramatic? Hearing this, all the disciples felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Sect leader Lin's face is covered in blood, but he's still alive. As expected of sect leader Lin. Didn't Yi Ling spray the blood on his face? Hearing everyone's words, Lin used a spell technique to wash the blood off his face. However, on the side of his clean face, the crowd actually saw a bloodstain that was slowly oozing blood. The wound wasn't big and seemed to have been scratched. Ing! The phoenix seemed to have realized something and cried out excitedly, flapping its pure gold wings as if it was celebrating. Sect leader Lin's face is injured. Could it be that strike just now? That move was used by senior sister Yi Ling, so she won, right? Even though they were saying this, the disciples still didn't dare to believe it. Previously, Lin had made an agreement with Yi Ling that if she could injure him and make him bleed, then he would lose the match. Now, there was a bloodstain on Lin's face. 13 minutes have elapsed and Lin is injured. Yi Ling is the victor of this sparring match. Bai Ling announced the final result in a loud and clear voice. The entire drill ground instantly fell silent. Then, raucous cheers erupted into the heavens. Congratulations to senior sister for winning the match. She won. Senior sister actually won. Awesome, this is the most inspiring and touching counterattack I've ever seen, Wu. We are proud and elated. Everyone is happy. Ha ha ha. Everyone was elated to see Yi Ling's miserable state, and they all expressed their joy and excitement for her victory. When success was extremely difficult and difficult to obtain, people would often be filled with admiration toward the successful person and would silently stand on the same side as them. In contrast, and Lin had been the most badass throughout the entire match, but he had been injured once and had become a negative example for all the disciples. Dongzhen, Cheng Yingxiong was a little excited as he looked at the sexy vixen beside him, but at the same time he was also a little intimidated and fearful. Dongzhen patted Cheng Yingxiong's shoulder 3 times before swaying her fiery foxtail and blinking seductively with a smile. See you tomorrow. Cheng Yingxiong faltered slightly before becoming ecstatic. He turned toward Yi Ling with tears welling up in his eyes with gratitude. Thank you, senior sister Yi. On the drill ground, the raucous cheers didn't affect the two of them. Yi Ling dragged her battered body to her feet with great difficulty, and she looked up at Lin with a trembling voice. Master, I won. And Lin nodded with a smile. That's right, little Ling is the best. Yi Ling stared blankly at Lin. She looked at his warm smile and his tall and straight figure. Even though he wasn't very muscular, he was extremely reliable and gave her a sense of security. She thought back to 100 years ago when she was learning sword techniques and cultivation from her master. Every time she made progress, her master would always praise her like this, praising her for being the best. Then her master disappeared. Her master couldn't see any of her progress either. All of the praises that she had become accustomed to suddenly disappeared from her life. Only then did she realize how much she wanted to be acknowledged by that person for all of her hard work. Without that person's praises, she didn't know who to tell about the joy she felt every time she made progress. From being at a loss for what to do, to focusing wholeheartedly on Tao, spirit nurturing, soul formation, return to void along the way. She wanted so badly to tell that person about all of her progress. She wanted so badly to hear that person praise, Little Ling is the best, again. This was a dream that she had never dared to tell anyone, but it had finally come true today. Yi Ling stared at the white-robed figure in front of her eyes, and hot tears began to flow from her eyes. Hey, Little Ling, why are you crying? Did I praise you in the wrong way? And Lin was given a fright by the sight of Yi Ling's tears. Uffed. Yi Ling burst into laughter. Her smile was particularly enchanting under the setting sun. After smiling for a while, she felt her vision blur a little. Her body swayed slightly and she fell backward. In the next instant, a light breeze blew past, and Lin half knelt to the ground and wrapped his arms around Yi Ling's slender waist before cradling her in his arms. Little Ling, are you all right? And Lin looked at Yi Ling with a hint of guilt in his eyes, and he was remorseful that he had gone too far. I'm fine. I'm just too tired, but I'm very happy and I want to rest as soon as I relax. Yi Ling felt the warmth radiating from her body, and she snuggled into Lin's arms with a hint of attachment. Her actions and demeanor were completely unlike those of a young woman. Instead, she was more like a little girl who was clinging onto her big brother. She raised her head and looked up at the gradually darkening sky. There were still remnants of reddish-golden and purple light lingering in the sky, making it appear like a vibrant oil painting. She couldn't help but ask, Master, do you like to watch the sunset? And Lin faltered momentarily before nodding. I do. I like it too. A sweet smile appeared on Yi Ling's face as she heaved a long sigh before slowly closing her eyes. A familiar aura and a familiar warmth. In her dreams, Yi Ling felt as if she had returned to 100 years ago. Every time she finished practicing her sword techniques, the sun would set, and she would be drenched in sweat. And Lin would often call out to her from the drill ground. Let's go, Little Ling Master has finished cooking, so come home and eat. Yi Ling would always pounce toward her master with elation and hold onto his warm hand as she told him about her gains from the day. Hearing Lin's praise made her feel as if the day had been a complete and fulfilling one. Time flew by, and the past was no longer the same. Thankfully, Her master had finally returned home. With her master by her side, she enjoyed the sunset. She really liked it. Chapter 1487. And Lin held the sleeping Yiling in his arms, and he discovered that her tense body was now completely relaxed, most likely because she had someone she could trust by her side. A green figure instantly appeared in front of Enlin and looked nervously at Yiling in his arms. She's fine. She must have fallen asleep due to overexertion. Su Xiaolan heaved a sigh of relief after checking Yiling's condition. She glared at Enlin with a cold expression. You're the master, yet you dare to lay your hands on your disciple? If I were her, I wouldn't bear to do that to her. Su Xiaolan was Yiling's second master, and she couldn't help but feel heartache at the sight of Yiling's wounded body. And Lin was quite open-minded about this. She has cultivated for so long, and she wants my approval, so I can't go easy on her. Otherwise, she won't be happy even if she wins. Only by going all out would she be satisfied. Look at how happy she was just now. Su Xiaolan heaved a forlorn sigh. It was quite clear that Enlin was right. What a silly child. Su Xiaolan stroked Yiling's cheek, which was still stained with blood, as she spoke in a gentle voice. How could she not understand Yiling's thoughts? And Lin waved a hand and stowed the sword to send you safely on your way into Yiling's storage ring. He then carried Yiling back to the pavilion with Su Xiaolan in his arms. This earth-shattering battle between master and disciple finally drew to a conclusion. All of the disciples present had a feast for their eyes. Not only had they experienced how powerful their sect leader was, but they had also realized just how bad *SS the cultivation methods they were cultivating in were. The 4-9 sword techniques are so powerful. I have to work even harder to cultivate them from now on. If the 4-9 sword techniques are already so powerful, then wouldn't the 4-9 cultivation method be amazing as well? Of course. Senior Sister Yiling, who defeated the sect leader, cultivates the 4-9 cultivation method. After watching this battle, not only did the disciples' eyes receive a baptism, their Tao hearts also received a comprehensive baptism. They became more confident and were filled with more hope for the future. And Lin stood on the railing of the attic, gazing at the 2 bright moons in the sky. Su Xiaolan and Su Qianyan were currently cleaning Yiling's wounds and changing her clothes. And Lin wouldn't be able to do such a thing. He would be beaten to death by Su Xiaolan. Therefore, he could only wait outside the house. Beside him were Xianyuan Cheng, Dabai, and Tina, all of whom were watching the moon with him. What's going on with big sister Chang'e? It's been 100 years, but she still hasn't defeated that mysterious powerful being? And Lin looked up at the blood moon and the crescent moon in the night sky with a perplexed expression. He still remembered that Chang'e had the upper hand when he looked at the sky, but now the battle between the 2 moons had become a stalemate. In other words, the gap between Chang'e and that mysterious expert had been evened out. Xianyuancheng heaved a faint sigh. Even after countless preparations, she still can't defeat fate. And Lin's eyes narrowed slightly. What do you mean? In the 10 years since you disappeared, the blood moon has become dull and lusterless, while the silver moon is as white as a pearl. If the battle continues, the blood moon will lose without a doubt. Xianyuancheng said. However, we've all overlooked something, and that's that Chang'e is a human, and Lin already had a bad premonition upon hearing this. The Tao of the true moon is the one and only Tao in this world, and it connects directly to the essence of the great Tao of heaven and earth. The sky can't have 2 moons at the same time, and this is the law of the heavens. Now that the heavenly Tao is going to destroy the human race, will it still allow the human race to rule over the only moon? It's very clear that it will only reject. Xianyuancheng was a little enraged as he spoke to this point. Hence, the obstacle that Chang'e is facing is extremely terrifying. It's the subconscious consciousness of the heavenly Tao. If Chang'e wants the moon, the heavens will instinctively refuse to give it to her. Then, upon seeing that the Darkwing tribe also wants the moon, the heavens will instinctively give the Darkwing tribe preferential treatment. Hence, this is something that she can't do unless she can defeat the heavens. And Lin fell silent. He understood Chang'e's situation, and he also understood why the Darkwing tribe mighty figure was able to turn the tables. He felt like she was facing an unfair battle that she had no chance of winning. The only thing she could do was to persevere until a new variable appeared in the world. Wait, a Darkwing tribe mighty figure? And Lin faltered slightly as he realized something. That's right, we've already ascertained her identity. She's the moonlit night monarch of the Darkwing tribe, and she's trying to progress to the Dao integration stage. However, we don't know where she is right now, so there's nothing we can do, Xin Yuancheng replied. And Lin came to a sudden realization. So it was the moonlit night monarch. Thinking back, she had tried to steal the evil-slaying sword from him and had even engaged in a fierce battle with him. Who would have thought that she was about to reach the Dao integration stage now? And Lin made up his mind. He was going to visit Chang'e someday and see if there was anything he could do to help her. Chirp! The cry of a phoenix sounded in the distance. A streak of reddish-golden light flashed through the night sky before landing lightly on the railing beside Enlin. It looked up at Enlin with its large, round eyes, and there was a golden tree branch in its beak. The phoenix was currently in its miniature form. It was only 1 meter in length, and its body was like that of a peacock, but it was countless times more regal and majestic than a peacock. Even in its miniature form, one couldn't help but feel a sense of reverence toward it. "Little Huang, what's that in your beak?" And Lin stroked the phoenix's head to find that it was very furry and warm. Even though Little Huang had already established a beast pet contract with Su Xiaolan, and Lin still included it in his beast pet team. After all, he had already given it a name, so it would always be Lin's bird, no matter where it went. The phoenix cocked its head to the side and shot an arrogant glance at Enlin. It let out a defiant chirp, perhaps because it was displeased that Enlin was touching it, or because it was displeased that Enlin was calling it Little Huang. Right at this moment, Su Xiaolan pushed open the door, and her expression instantly darkened upon seeing this. "Little Huang, Enlin is your true master. Who are you trying to impress?" The phoenix shuddered, and even its tail stood up on end. It immediately leaped into Enlin's arms and began to rub its body against Enlin's as it wriggled its body and rubbed itself against Enlin's chest seductively. Enlin. For some reason, he was suddenly feeling a little sympathetic toward this phoenix. Just what had it experienced to make it so obedient to Su Xiaolan? One had to realize that this was the most regal and beautiful mythological beast in this world. In his mind, the only creature that could compare with this phoenix was the 9-colored divine vermilion bird in the faraway southern heavenly wing nation. However, even that was a different level of magnificence, and Lin felt like it was time to ask Su Xiaolan for guidance. If he could master this technique, then Little Gu, Little Hong, and Little Na would also be as obedient as this phoenix. His life would be perfect. Chapter 1488. Su Xiaolan's expression eased a little when she saw the phoenix trying to curry favor with Enlin. She took the golden branch from the phoenix's mouth and explained to Enlin, "This is a phoenix wudong tree." Enlin's eyes lit up. Phoenix wudong tree? Is that the branch of the legendary wudong tree that even phoenixes love to perch on? Su Xiaolan shook her head. "That's not what I mean. The phoenix doesn't perch on the wudong tree just because it's good. It's because the phoenix often perches on the wudong tree that the wudong tree becomes good." Everyone's curiosity was piqued upon hearing this. Su Xiaolan explained, "Little Huang often sleeps on the wudong tree, and its excrement adheres to the wudong tree's branches. After years of absorption and precipitation, the wudong tree's branches will become extremely pure fire elemental and wood elemental spirit medicines." Everyone exclaimed in amazement. That sounds awesome. And Lin's lips twitched slightly. He looked at the regal phoenix and couldn't help but ask, Xiaolan, are you saying that little Huang held a tree branch nourished with its own excrement in its mouth and happily came to pay tribute? Everyone, Su Xiaolan. The phoenix's feathers stood on end. Little Huang was about to fight Lin to the death, but Su Xiaolan held it back. Don't be so impulsive. And Lin's words aren't wrong. That's the truth. Besides, your name is Little Huang, and many dogs are also named Little Huang. Dogs can eat excrement, so why can't you hold a tree branch nourished with excrement in your mouth? Su Xiaolan consoled the phoenix again. The phoenix. And Lin. Everyone looked at the phoenix with shock and sympathy. To everyone's surprise, the phoenix accepted Su Xiaolan's consolation before lying on the ground with a lifeless expression. Everyone felt even more sympathy for the phoenix upon seeing this. Next time, I have to get Xiaolan to teach me how to tame my pet beasts, and Lin thought to himself. Su Xiaolan fiddled with the golden branches, nodded slightly, and was about to enter the house. Wait, Xiaolan, you have to tell me how to use this branch. You're not telling Yiling to eat it, are you? And Lin couldn't help but ask. He added in his heart, if you force my disciple to eat shit, I won't agree even if you beat me to death. Su Xiaolan seemed to know what Lin was thinking. She couldn't help but laugh and said, what are you thinking? The phoenix wudong tree has extremely pure flame and wood powers, and it's especially useful for healing injuries. I'm extracting its life force. So how can I let my precious disciple chew on the branch? Hearing this, Lin was finally relieved and followed Su Xiaolan. He continued to observe the stars. Then Phoenix directly pushed him out of the attic from behind. Little Huang was a vengeful person, and now that Xiaolan was gone, it could finally take revenge on Lin. Nighttime in the 4-9 Immortal sect was very peaceful. Perhaps some people were sleeping, some were meditating, but no one dared to fight. If anyone dared to make a ruckus, then they would be locked up the next day. However, at this moment, Lin was awakened by the phoenix's rumbling, and many of the disciples who were either sleeping or meditating were awakened. What's that sound? Holy F asterisk CK. How dare he fight in the 4-9 Immortal sect at night? Ha ha ha, he's going to be locked up. I'm going to eat shit if he doesn't get locked up for at least half a month after causing such a huge commotion. Let's go watch the show. Huh, they're not fighting anymore. Just as all of the sect disciples were about to head over to watch the show, the flames suddenly disappeared. And Lin lay on the ground panting heavily, and a section of his backside was exposed, indicating that he had been burned. The phoenix lay on the ground like a dead chicken with its feathers all over the ground, and there were a few large bumps on its head. Little Huang, I'm going to report you to Xiaolan if you keep jumping around like this. And Lin lay on the ground with an enraged expression. The phoenix shuddered as a pitiable expression appeared on its face toward Lin. Chirp, 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 and Lin couldn't help but chuckle. Say, why are you so scared of Xiaolan? You're the ruler of the bird tribe, the high and mighty phoenix. The phoenix wore a disconsolate expression. Chirp, chirp, chirp. By the way, how did she teach you? How did you become so obedient? And Lin asked curiously. It was not enough to just listen to one side of the story. He had to investigate the truth from multiple angles. The phoenix wore a bitter expression. Chirp, chirp, chirp. Chirp, 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 chirp. And Lin's expression darkened upon hearing this. Oi, what are you trying to say? Chirp once is enough. Why do you have to chirp so many times? The phoenix heaved a forlorn sigh. Chirp, 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 chirp. That's right, I get what you're trying to say, but all of my beast pets are so adorable, and I really can't bear to beat them up. And Lin shook his head. The phoenix. At this moment, a fairy who was tugging on Lin's hair chuckled. Giant Lin, you won't be able to hit me even if you want to. I can escape into the divine mirror world right away. And Lin knew that she was right. Tina was almost never in danger now, and she could hide in the divine mirror world. Even a Tao integration stage, super mighty figure wouldn't be able to do anything to her. He had heard that this little girl had killed 3 Heaven Pioneer stage great generals on the Western Front, so she really was quite powerful. By the way, Jian and Lin, you're back. You're still hiding your identity. What are you up to? Tina asked. The human army had been pushed back again and again. The eastern, northern, and central fronts had all entered the kingdom of the 9 states. So even if Lin were to return, he wouldn't be able to do much. About that. And Lin's eyes narrowed slightly before a smile suddenly appeared on his face. I'm going to destroy at least one of the heavenly human tribe's armies. Little Na's mouth gaped open upon hearing this, and even the phoenix's body shuddered upon hearing this. What a domineering statement. Peace and quiet returned to the night. Perhaps it was because the battle today had been far too intense, but Lin also closed his eyes to rest for a while. The next morning, Chen sent a voice transmission talisman to inform him that the ancient Dragon Empress was about to arrive. The ancient Dragon Empress wore a colorful imperial robe and tore through space to arrive at the gate of the 4-9 Immortal Sect. She was given a fright by the sight before her. Over 1,000 disciples and elders were beating drums and gongs to welcome her with a warm welcome. The tortoise duo of the past were now holding hands and constantly unleashing fire-type magic techniques. They blasted flames into the sky, creating beautiful fireworks. We warmly welcome the ancient Dragon Empress to our sect. The ancient Dragon Empress has worked tirelessly to teach us. You are the most holy teacher. I'm willing to nurture exceptional talents for the sake of my students, and I'm diligent. Even though the heavens and the earth are eternal, Master's kindness will never end. Teacher Ancient Dragon Empress, I love you. Over 1,000 disciples, elders, and pavilion lords yelled at the same time with earnest and fervent expressions. The ancient Dragon Empress' eyes widened in shock. Chapter 1489. Never would the ancient Dragon Empress have thought that the entire sect would come out to welcome her. Furthermore, they were welcoming her in such a bizarre manner. What the hell were those idioms and reciting poems? And ancient Dragon Empress, I love you? How shameless could they be? She didn't even know what to say at the sight of everyone's earnest expressions. After a short pause, a smile appeared on the ancient Dragon Empress' face. Thank you for your warm welcome. You're welcome. I hope we can all get along in the future. She was the empress of the entire evil dragon tribe, after all, so she had no problem dealing with a situation like this. The spatial rift behind the ancient Dragon Empress hadn't even healed, yet when a holy light suddenly descended. The holy light seemed to have warmed heaven and earth. Not only that, but all living beings that were illuminated by the holy light had their impurities cleansed. And Lin's expression shifted slightly. What a powerful purifying power! An angel with 6 wings spread out from the rift. She wore a flowing white dress, and her dazzling golden hair danced in the wind. Her skin was as translucent as jade, and her features were exquisitely beautiful. She wore a warm, healing smile on her face. Hi, everyone. I am Rafaela, the guard of the ancient Dragon Empress. Please take care of me. The angel's voice was very pleasant to the ears, and her tone was very comforting. Everyone was stunned by the angel's beauty, and they were even more astonished upon hearing her name. In particular, some of the disciples who had only just joined the sect were already shrieking in excitement. Rafaela, she's one of the 4 archangels of the Garden of Eden, Rafaela? She's so beautiful. I didn't think such a pure and beautiful smile could exist in this world. And she looks so gentle. Crap, my heart is racing. All of the disciples were already getting excited. Compared to the ancient Dragon Empress, Rafaela was more attention-grabbing. The ancient Dragon Empress felt an indescribable sense of suffocation in her heart. Rafaela smiled warmly in response to all of the praise and awe, and she even nodded at all of the disciples in an elegant and graceful manner. This elevated her image to a whole new level in everyone's hearts. And Lin was quite impressed by this, but he wasn't surprised. He knew that the Lightwing clan was a group of natural idols, and Rafaela was a perfect example of this. If she wanted to become a star, she could probably become the #1 female star on the Tai Chu continent with her beautiful looks and super social skills. Raphael's voice was clear and sweet, so she should have no problem singing. Her appearance was impeccable. If she showed her face more, it would probably be unforgettable. Her smile was so pure and natural that people couldn't take their eyes off her. Unknowingly, and Lin began to list out Raphael's many good points. It was only when Su Xiaolan smacked him on the head that he came to a sudden realization. What a strong affinity. Is this Raphael's ability? And Lin was shocked. Su Xiaolan's mouth twitched. Hee, is this the reason why you can't take your eyes off her? And Lin. Raphael seemed to have noticed what was happening to Lin, and she couldn't help but chuckle to herself. Her beautiful light blue eyes were slightly curved, as if she was taking pleasure in Lin's misfortune. This was a very detestable behavior, but no one was disgusted by it. Instead, they felt like it was very natural and adorable. What a vixen! Tina put her hands on her hips and harumphed with rage. Raphael looked at the little fairy on Lin's shoulder, and she stepped forward with a pristine fair foot. She appeared before the little fairy in the blink of an eye and leaned forward with a warm smile on her face. You're right. I'm a vixen among angels, and you're an angel among vixens. Tina's body shuddered slightly, and she was suddenly struck by a sense of excitement. Su Xiaolan was the only one who hadn't lost her composure, and a smile appeared on her face. All right, let's not stand here. Let's get teacher, Ancient Dragon Empress, to familiarize herself with the 4-9 Immortal Sect first. Sure, it's the sect leader's responsibility to show them around. And Lin immediately volunteered with excitement. Splat! Boom! And Lin was slapped into the ground by Su Xiaolan, and his body sank several hundred meters into the ground. Su Xiaolan's smile remained on her face. The sect leader's health is a little unwell, so I'll show you around in his stead. Gasp! When the crowd saw the scene, they could not help but gasp. The sect leader's health is a little unwell? Is it because you've hit him so hard that he's hurt? Many of the disciples seemed to have come to a sudden realization. So Xiaolan was still at the top of the sect's food chain. Even the Ancient Dragon Empress and Raphael faltered slightly upon seeing this before feeling an indescribable sense of panic. Thank you, Miss Su Xiaolan, the Ancient Dragon Empress said with a smile. Thank you very much. Raphael withdrew her 6 wings and extended a slight bow. In the face of the top dogs of the 4-9 Immortal Sect, they didn't dare to act rashly. Thus, Su Xiaolan, the Ancient Dragon Empress, and Raphael made their way through the gate of the Immortal Sect before everyone's eyes. Some of the disciples finally came to their senses and heaved forlorn sighs. Why didn't you prepare the welcome lines for Raphael just then? How regretful! I really want her to hear my words, even if it's just yelling lines. I didn't think I would be able to see Archangel Raphael up close. How could there be such a beautiful angel in this world? Even though Raphael had already walked away, everyone was still discussing this topic. She didn't need to flaunt her charm, but she would naturally become the center of attention as soon as she appeared. As for the Ancient Dragon Empress, Who was the Ancient Dragon Empress? Was she Raphael's entourage? At this moment, within a crater several hundred meters, deep at the entrance of the sect, and Lin was staring blankly up at the sky above the crater. Giant and Lin, why didn't you follow her? If you had followed Xiaolan just then, she wouldn't have been able to chase you away. That way, you would have been able to interact with that beautiful big sister angel. Tina tugged on Lin's hair, and Lin didn't reply. Instead, he murmured to himself, To think that the fourth heavenly disciple's attendant of the heaven-crushing sect is already a Tao integration stage, super mighty figure. This heaven-crushing sect is way too powerful. Isn't it a good thing that they're powerful? That way, the human race will have a better chance at victory. Tina was a little perplexed. She could hear the concern in Lin's voice. You have to realize that aside from Chin Chin, the first and fourth heavenly disciples of the heaven-crushing sect aren't humans. Do you really believe that they'll wholeheartedly fight for the survival of the human race with their lives on the line? And Lin voiced his thoughts. Tina blinked her emerald eyes. Seeing as that's the case, why don't you, Giant and Lin, join the heaven-crushing sect? You can become their leader and make them listen to you. Chapter 1490. Boom! Tina's words jolted him out of his reverie, and Lin was suddenly enlightened. If he was worried that the heaven-crushing sect wouldn't serve the human race wholeheartedly, then he could just infiltrate their ranks and become the leader of the heaven-crushing sect. When that time came, the heaven-crushing sect would belong to him, and he wouldn't have to worry about them stirring up trouble. That's true, but won't it be a little difficult? And Lin hesitated momentarily. He and Chen Chen had stayed in that strange space for 100 days, so they had interacted quite a bit. He knew that Cyril was the most powerful being in the true demon tribe. Setting aside all of his special abilities, he was at least a god of creation, and Lin was only a measly return to void stage mighty figure. So how was he going to take over the throne? So be it. I'll take it one step at a time. And Lin slapped his own face to wake himself up before crawling out of the hole. Su Xiaolan took the ancient Dragon Empress and Rafaela on a brief tour of the sect. As for the mystic realms and mystic realms, those were classified information of the sect, so she didn't take them with her. After half a day, the three of them completed their tour, and Lin began to look for students to learn the heaven-crushing techniques. Apparently, the heaven-crushing techniques could only be learned after attaining spatial power, which meant that the minimum requirement was the return to void stage. Thus, he gathered all of the return to void stage mighty figures who were still active in the sect. Dabai, Xiaohong, Merlin, Cassidy, Xianyuan Cheng, Su Qianyan, Yiling, Tina, Lu Qianhuan, Sun Yulua, Yao Mingxi by Ling. Even Su Xiaolan and Little Huang came to learn. The heaven-crushing techniques were very special. They required one to observe the great Tao of heaven and earth and understand what the heavens were before cultivating the true intent of breaking through all shackles. The specific learning process was very complex, and how far one could progress depended on one's aptitude. For example, the ancient Dragon Empress was able to gather the will of an entire tribe before learning the heaven-crushing techniques and taking advantage of the flaws in the heavenly Tao of the ancient Dragon Realm and the Tai Chu continent to forcibly break through the barrier between the two worlds and enter the Tai Chu continent, thereby destroying the ancient Dragon Realm along with her. This kind of aptitude was top-notch in the heaven-crushing sect, and Lin also had a mysterious talent in the Heaven Splitter art. With Chen Chen's assistance, he had actually already mastered the most powerful heaven-crushing techniques. But he didn't know how to teach people, and he didn't know how to lead people into the sect. Otherwise, he could be a teacher himself. The ancient Dragon Empress stood on the drill ground and sighed with emotion at the sight of all of the vibrant prodigies and mighty figures before her. The 4-9 Immortal sect was becoming more and more terrifying. Most of the 4-9 Immortal sect's forces were on the front lines. The group in front of him was a small portion of experts who had just returned to recuperate. Even so, it was already comparable to a first-rate force on the continent. Teacher Gulong, when are we starting? Sun Yulua asked excitedly. The ancient Dragon Empress expression darkened slightly. My name is not Ancient Dragon. I'm the ancient Dragon Empress. Su Qianyan fell into deep thought and said softly, Emperor is the title of the position. Ancient Dragon should be the specific title, so it shouldn't be a problem, Ancient Dragon Empress. It sounded very reasonable. Speaking of which, why did she call herself the Ancient Dragon Empress in the first place? All right, you can call me Jinling, the ancient dragon empress, heaved a forlorn sigh. Oh! Everyone let loose cries of surprise as they stared at the ancient dragon empress, with scorching eyes, as if to say that they finally knew the ancient dragon empress' real name. All right, teacher, ancient dragon empress. Lu Qianhuan immediately replied. You can call me Jinling, the ancient dragon empress smiled. Yes, teacher, ancient dragon empress. Lu Qianhuan replied with a serious expression. The ancient dragon empress was dumbstruck. Why was this girl so stubborn? Sister Lu, call her Jinling. Su Qianyun tugged on Lu Qianhuan's sleeve before speaking in a soft voice. Su Qianyun, you have to use your brain and think about it. Why is Jinling called the ancient dragon empress now? It's because she thinks the name Jinling is too vulgar, so she wants everyone to call her the ancient dragon empress. This is like a so-and-so telling others not to call her so-and-so and to refer to her as Her Majesty. She likes to be referred to as the ancient dragon empress, so we naturally have to cater to her preferences. We have to suck up to her and make her happy so she'll be willing to teach us more spell techniques. Lu Qianhuan patted Su Qianyun's head with a meaningful and heartfelt expression as she spoke to Su Qianyun. Xianyuan Cheng also came to a realization. Su Qianyun, don't call her teacher ancient dragon empress anymore. You have to add the word empress to her title to give her some face. Su Qianyun was enlightened upon hearing this, and a faint smile appeared on her face as she turned toward the ancient dragon empress. Teacher, ancient dragon empress, when do we begin? The ancient dragon empress clasped a hand over her chest. King went around in circles, and you're back to square one? You finally revealed your real name, only to be scorned by her and continue to call me the ancient dragon empress. What do you mean, give me some face? I'm not the kind of dragon you think I am. The ancient dragon empress felt extremely depressed, but she didn't know what to say in response, so she could only muster up her courage and begin the lesson. I'm going to teach everyone a cultivation method that will allow you to better communicate with heaven and earth and better understand the essence of the heavenly Tao. The lesson began. Thankfully, everyone was very diligent, and there were no hiccups along the way. It was just that Dabai was a little perverted and kept looking around. Xiao Hong was a little lazy and didn't want to move. Merlin and Cassidy were a little obsessed and kept licking their lips at Enlin. Lu Qianhuan was a little eccentric and kept thinking about cosplay. San Yilua was a little scary and kept pretending to be a ghost. The phoenix was a little mischievous and kept flying around, chirping and crying. Xianyuan Cheng was a little annoying. He was almost referring to the heaven-crushing sect as the heaven-exploding sect. Bai Ling was a little professional. She was learning how to replace spell techniques with a massive machine and even ask some questions that the ancient dragon empress couldn't understand. Aside from all of this, being a teacher wasn't that difficult. The ancient dragon empress looked up into the sky with tears welling up in her eyes. Don't be too dejected, master. These students are quite interesting, so they won't be difficult to teach. Rafaela's gentle and soothing voice sounded beside her ear. The ancient dragon empress rubbed her head. Rafaela, how about I cast another heart-saving spell technique on you? Let's do it again. The ancient dragon empress nodded with an aggrieved expression. Never would she have thought that her heavenly disciple servant would become her heart-saving medical staff. What a heart-wrenching experience this was. After the heart-saving spell technique, Teacher Ancient Dragon Empress was full of vigor again, and she immersed herself in teaching. The students were all full of themselves, so the teacher had to use everything she had. Before they knew it, 10 days had passed. The Ancient Dragon Empress discovered that she had lost quite a few strands of hair. After a series of high-intensity lessons, the students didn't waste the few strands of hair that the Ancient Dragon Empress had sacrificed. On the drill ground, the sun hung high in the sky. The Ancient Dragon Empress faced the dozen or so students, and a smile appeared on her beautiful and heroic features. Today is the day for me to assess the results of your cultivation. I hope all of you can perform well. Chapter 1491. The heaven-crushing techniques actually placed a lot of emphasis on understanding and aptitude. The aptitude referred to here was not aptitude in cultivation. Instead, it was aptitude in observing the Tao of the heavens. The two were not the same. Those who understood would be able to grasp the basics very easily, and the more they studied, the more profound they would become. Those who didn't understand would be able to achieve very little no matter how hard they tried. Take Shui Zhantian, for example. Even though he hadn't joined the heaven-crushing sect, the ancient dragon empress was very optimistic about him and had taught him the heaven-crushing techniques under the condition that the mystic techniques were kept a secret. Now he was the most proficient heaven-crushing techniques cultivator below the Tao integration stage. This was the aptitude of the heaven-crushing techniques. Aptitude was far more important than perseverance in studying. She could only teach them how to fuse heaven-crushing true intent into their own power. Even though they could improve through practice, aptitude determined everything. 10 days of study was enough to determine which of these people would be able to progress further and further in the heaven-crushing sect and become the pillars of the sect. Next, use your heaven-crushing techniques to attack me with all your might, and I'll use my heaven-crushing techniques to defend myself. The ancient dragon empress stood on the drill ground with a confident expression on her face. After attaining heaven-crushing true intent, one would be able to fuse their own power to create heaven-crushing techniques. This was the allure of the heaven-crushing sect. It was easy to get started, but if one wanted to progress further, they had to rely on aptitude. "Who's going first?" the ancient dragon empress asked with a smile. Everyone looked at one another. A black-robed man with a cold expression stepped forward. "I'll go first." The first to step forward was Yao Mingxi from the Spirit Sword State. He was once Sun Lin's diehard fan, but now he was a return to Void Stage Sword Immortal. "Please." The ancient dragon empress waved a sleeve through the air before extending a slender hand toward the man. "Teacher, ancient dragon empress, I'm going first." Yao Mingxi drew his long sword, and it flew through the air like a dragon. The sword projection transformed into an azure dragon that roared toward the ancient dragon empress with earth-shattering might. It was imbued with a sense of pride and arrogance, as if its life was in its own hands. The ancient dragon empress' colorful dragon robe fluttered violently in the face of the sword intent. She closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, her pure golden eyes seemed to have pierced through the darkness, as well as the power to split heaven and earth apart. "Break for me." She spat out the true dragon's decree. The sound waves transformed into substance and instantly spread out. Yao Mingxi's green dragon was instantly shattered by the sound waves. At the same time, his chest felt like it had been hit by a heavy hammer, and his body flew backward like a cannonball. "Uff!" He spat out a mouthful of blood and tumbled to the ground in an extremely sorry state. The ancient dragon empress shook her head. "His aptitude is mediocre. Even my destiny as my own is so powerless." When she said that his aptitude was mediocre, she meant that he was no different from the average return to Void Stage cultivator. Yao Mingxi crawled up from the ground and was a little disappointed to hear this, but he quickly composed himself and extended a respectful salute. "Thank you for your guidance, teacher, ancient dragon empress." The ancient dragon empress nodded with a smile. For some reason, she was feeling quite elated. These kids had been messing around with her for the past few days. She was going to get back at them today. Rafaela offered a comforting smile. "You don't have to feel too much pressure. After all, only 1 out of 10 return to Void Stage mighty figures who cultivate the heaven-crushing techniques are quite outstanding. Even if you're only mediocre, you'll still be able to deal with the heavenly human tribe more easily after cultivating the heaven-crushing techniques. It's a win-win situation. The archangel's warm smile, coupled with her gentle and considerate words, instantly alleviated Yao Mingxi's sense of disappointment. Even the people behind him were feeling a lot less tense. And Lin was even more impressed by this six-winged angel upon seeing this. Wouldn't it be great if she could handle the diplomatic affairs of the 4-9 Immortal Sect? Who's next? The ancient Dragon Empress asked with a smile. Let me. Lu Qianhuan waved her wand with an eager expression. She wore a sailor outfit that revealed her long, sexy legs. Bring it on. The ancient Dragon Empress prepared herself. The pink wand in Lu Qianhuan's hand rotated at high speed as a terrifying power converged. This power was imbued with the power of termination, and if unleashed to the extreme, it would be able to bring the entire heaven and earth to an end. The ancient Dragon Empress' eyes lit up. Oh, that's pretty good, heaven-crushing true intent. It's very unique. Eat this, heaven-crushing final spark. The young sorceress roared as a pillar of light imbued with the power of termination erupted from her wand. Boom! A white energy wave tore through the earth before crashing directly toward the ancient Dragon Empress' face. Shatter! The ancient Dragon Empress stood on the spot as she unleashed her mantra again. Her sound waves transformed into substantial sound waves that crashed toward the energy wave. The ancient Dragon Empress power was just about to shatter the light wave. However, Lu Qianhuan seemed to have thrown all caution to the wind, and she tossed her wand into the air before stomping her foot again. Sorceress mode activate. Heaven-crushing final spark. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Over 100 golden holes suddenly appeared in the air, all of which were quickly accumulating energy. The energy within each hole was comparable to the power of her heaven-crushing final spark. Boom, boom, boom. Over 100 heaven-crushing final sparks crashed toward the ancient Dragon Empress at once. The ancient Dragon Empress expression finally became grave upon seeing this. Heaven-crushing armor. The ancient Dragon Empress took a deep breath as an indestructible armor materialized around her body. If she was going to crush the heavens, then she had to protect herself first. A semi-transparent golden dress draped over the ancient Dragon Empress body. This was her armor to crush the heavens. Relentless explosions rocked the earth. The ancient Dragon Empress was blasted over 100 times, and Lu Qianhuan didn't even have a chance to see how the ancient Dragon Empress was faring before she heard a familiar voice. Heaven-crushing wrath palm. A palm strike suddenly tore through the energy explosions before crashing into Lu Qianhuan's body and sending her flying before tumbling to the ground with injuries. Lu Qianhuan had been defeated. A hint of surprise appeared on the ancient Dragon Empress' face. Your aptitude is exceptional. You were able to fuse the Tao of termination into your heaven-crushing technique and end the heavens with your own Tao. If you cultivate diligently, you'll definitely be able to make new breakthroughs. Thank you, teacher. Lu Qianhuan extended a curtsy with a wide grin in the face of the praise, as if she had only done something insignificant. The ancient Dragon Empress' lips twitched. She was the fourth heavenly disciple. Couldn't she at least pretend to be ecstatic when she gave her such a high evaluation? No one took the ancient Dragon Empress evaluation to heart. Only Rafaela was extremely surprised. Even if they didn't unleash their cultivation bases or divine Tao, it would still be quite an impressive feat to be able to force the ancient Dragon Empress to unleash a heaven-crushing technique. As expected, the 4-9 Immortal Sect really was filled with prodigies. Dabai, you go. And Lin instructed. Teacher Ancient Dragon Empress, I'm coming. Woof. Dabai pounced toward the ancient Dragon Empress, excitedly with his tongue hanging out of his mouth. His eyes were still fixated on her voluptuous breasts and her tall, slender figure. A disdainful expression appeared on the ancient Dragon Empress' face. F***CK off. Dabai was knocked flying by the terrifying sound waves. He also received an average aptitude rating. Rafaela heaved a sigh of relief. It looked like there were only a few freakishly talented prodigies. Right at this moment, sect leader Lin was a little displeased. The ancient Dragon Empress had been teaching them for 10 days, but they kept losing. Not only was this a disgrace to the sect, but it was also a disgrace to their teacher. The ancient Dragon Empress seemed to have seen everyone's concerned expressions, and she offered words of encouragement. If you're scared, you can team up and fight together. I can still assess your cultivation level. And Lin paused momentarily before suggesting, how about Merlin, Cassidy, you two come at me together? You've been holy disciples for so long, so you should have some synergy with each other. Merlin and Cassidy readily accepted this arrangement, and Lin didn't want to embarrass himself too much, so he offered another word of encouragement. If you defeat teacher Ancient Dragon Empress, you'll each be rewarded with 3 milliliters of holy blood. Boom! Boom! Heaven-crushing power erupted into the heavens. Chapter 1492. Merlin and Cassidy's eyes lit up with an unprecedented scorching light upon hearing that they would receive the holy blood if they won, as if the light of life and the flames of hope were burning within their eyes. An unprecedented heaven-shattering aura erupted from the two of them. So what? Cassidy looked at the ancient Dragon Empress, and her aura became more and more dangerous. Merlin's expression was extremely firm. For the holy leader's blood, I'll crush even the heavens. The Tao of heaven crushing was something that one's heart desired. However, the ancient Dragon Empress and the ancient Dragon Empress' thirst for blood trumped everything else. Due to this thirst, they were able to elevate the true intent and power of their heaven-crushing techniques to new heights. It was just as Merlin had said. For the holy leader's blood, they would crush even the heavens. The ancient Dragon Empress expression shifted again. You're using your own essential pursuit to enhance the Tao of heaven crushing? The ancient Dragon Empress expression shifted again. You're using your own essential pursuit to drive the Tao of heaven crushing? This wasn't impossible, but the increase in the heaven-crushing Tao's true intent was far too exaggerated. This doesn't make sense. Sonic booms erupted. There was a sonic boom in the air. The two of them were already hurtling toward the ancient Dragon Empress. Cassidy's crimson sword and Merlin's ghostly aura soared into the heavens. Both of them unleashed extremely astonishing power, as if they were going to tear through the entire heavens. Heaven-piercing sword. Cassidy let loose a clear cry, and her crimson sword soared into the sky before crashing down, dyeing heaven and earth a crimson color. Heaven-slaying ghost. Merlin summoned countless inky black ghosts, which blotted out the entire sky as ghostly wails and howls erupted forth, threatening to tear the entire sky apart. The name was very intimidating, but Lin was struck by the urge to throw up a mouthful of blood upon hearing it. Each and every one of their techniques was aimed at the heavens. To be honest, it really did sound very strange. The ancient Dragon Empress stood at the center of the energy vortex, as if she were the heavens that were about to be destroyed. She knew that the voice of the true dragon alone wouldn't be able to break through their spell techniques. These two were very powerful. She clenched her fists, and 2 golden dragons revolved around her arms as she launched them toward the 2 oncoming cultivators. Hell! An earth-shattering roar erupted. A golden dragon burst forth from his fist, containing extremely powerful might as it blasted toward the crimson sword and the ghost. The golden light destroyed all evil and broke through the blood-colored sky. There were ghostly wails and the sound of blood, swords breaking. In an instant, the world was replaced by golden light. Merlin and Cassidy both threw up mouthfuls of blood in unison before tumbling to the ground. It's over. The ancient Dragon Empress was still standing on the spot with a haughty expression. It's over. Cassidy stood up and wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth as she gripped her crimson sword tightly. There is no end. Merlin also stood up and the ghostly energy around them became denser and denser before condensing into an indescribable viscous mass that hung behind them like a waterfall. "It won't end before I defeat you," Cassidy said. "We can't end this before we obtain the blood of the Holy Patriarch," Merlin said. Raphaela's pupils contracted slightly upon seeing this. Their heaven-crushing true intent has risen again? How is this possible? For the sacred blood, kill. Merlin summoned the heaven-slaying demon over 10,000 feet tall. Cassidy had condensed 16 heaven-severing blood swords that were powerful enough to shatter all things. The two of them pounced toward the ancient dragon empress again. Roar! The heaven-slaying demon spread open its inky black, demonic claws and stabbed viciously toward the ancient dragon empress. Golden dragons revolved around the ancient dragon empress' fists as she launched another attack toward the heaven-slaying demon. Amidst the violent collision, the heaven-slaying demon was almost torn apart by the ancient dragon empress, Golden Dragon, but the ancient dragon empress' feet were forced to slide back for some distance. This was the first time she had moved during a battle. Right at this moment, the 16 blood swords pierced through the sky, as if they wanted to tear the sky into pieces. They dyed the sky red, carrying with them a vast might that could cleave the heavens. It was as if the sky itself was weeping blood. The ancient dragon empress sensed danger. She was the fourth heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect. How could she feel threatened by two newbies who had only been cultivating the heaven-crushing techniques for 10 days? Heaven-piercing armor. A translucent armor covered her body. At this moment, the blood sword had already descended. Hua, hua, hua! Sword intent tore at the ancient dragon empress armor in a frenzy. A few crisp sounds were heard. The ancient dragon empress was astonished to discover that cracks had appeared on her armor. The heaven-crushing intent is so powerful and terrifying. The ancient dragon empress was shocked. She gritted her teeth, and a dark yellow divine light revolved around her fingertip as she pointed a finger forward. Heaven-crushing millstone. A burst of dark yellow power erupted from her fingertip. Almost in an instant, the blood sword and the devil were crushed by that power. Even the aftermath of that power was destroyed. They were completely and utterly dead. Merlin and Cassidy were knocked flying again. The ancient dragon empress was panting slightly. That attack just then had clearly been quite taxing on her. To think that Master was forced to use her true heaven-crushing power. Raphaela had thought that this was going to be a simple test, but she was clearly wrong. Lu Qianhuan had given her a sense of awe, and this time, these two blood tribe cultivators gave her a huge fright. To everyone's surprise, Cassidy and Merlin crawled to their feet again. "We won't give up until Teacher Ancient Dragon Empress is defeated. Erg." A crazed expression appeared on Cassidy's face before she threw up a mouthful of blood, as if she had sustained some severe injuries. "We won't fall until we get the holy blood." Merlin roared into the sky. The ancient dragon empress was in a panic. What kind of F** king contestants were these? What kind of tragic and stirring character was this living performance of an unyielding destiny that defied the heavens? Thankfully, a pair of hands clamped down on the shoulders of the two fanatical blood tribe cultivators. "Little Kuo, little Mai, that's enough." And Lin spoke with a serious expression. But tears welled up in Cassidy's eyes. If it weren't for the fact that Teacher Ancient Dragon Empress held back, you would have been dead already. You won't be able to defeat her. You've already done a very good job. And Lin smiled. In reality, they had already done far better than he had anticipated. For the sake of the holy blood, these two were simply too terrifying. After giving each of them a milliliter of blood, the two of them were finally appeased. The ancient dragon empress paused for a long while before asking, "Who's next?" "Teacher Ancient Dragon Empress, you still haven't given your evaluation of Merlin and Cassidy, and Lin said with a fawning expression. The ancient dragon empress face convulsed slightly. Evaluation. Were those two insane people? In reality, she had been completely blown away by their insanity and had forgotten to give an evaluation. Both of them have exceptional aptitudes, and they are able to use their most fundamental pursuits to enhance the power of heaven crushing, which is very rare. Hence, Mr. and Lin used his own blood as an incentive to drastically enhance the combat prowess of the blood tribe. The ancient dragon empress looked at Enlin with a fake smile as she spoke. Cassidy and Merlin stared at Enlin with a fervent expression before turning to the ancient dragon empress with gratitude. This evaluation was simply too sincere. It was too deep in his heart. And Lin. He had really shot himself in the foot. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have reminded the ancient dragon empress to give an evaluation. The ancient dragon empress was a little elated, and she turned toward everyone else. Who's next? Chapter 1493. An extremely handsome man stood up and said, "Allow me." Rafaela's eyes lit up. This man was very much to her taste, and she had already noticed him when he first appeared at the entrance of the sect. Xianyuan Chang? The ancient dragon empress nodded. Make your move. Teacher, ancient dragon empress, please enlighten me. Xianyuan Chang drew his sword and charged toward the ancient dragon empress. Bai Ling strengthened the sect's protective formation expressionlessly and activated it to the maximum. Xianyuan Chang moved like the wind, and his eyes shone with a peculiar light. The ancient dragon empress was beginning to look forward to what kind of opponent she was going to face. Xianyuan Chang's sword blade glowed with an extremely agile white light as he leaped forward atop a yin-yang projection. Myriad spirit Tai Chi. Heaven detonation. The blade of his sword suddenly became scorching hot, and it quickly brightened. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion erupted. Destructive energy erupted forth and instantly engulfed the ancient dragon empress. Boundless energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings, as if it were going to puncture the entire heavens. This was truly an earth-shattering event. The explosion was like the descent of the sun, and a mushroom cloud of laughter erupted. And Lin, Su Xiaolan, and the Phoenix unleashed their shields with all their might to protect the people behind them. All of the sect disciples and elders trembled uncontrollably as they stared at the mushroom cloud on the drill ground. Thank God the sect leader had prohibited spectators. Otherwise, they really would be traumatized by this. The energy from the explosion quickly dissipated on the drill ground. Rafaela spread open her 6 wings, which enshrouded her body like a ball. Her beautiful blue eyes blinked as she surveyed the situation outside with lingering fear. The ancient dragon empress, who was the closest to Xianyuan Chang, was still standing on the spot. However, her face had been charred black, and her imperial robe was in tatters. She opened her mouth, from which white smoke escaped. The explosion had happened far too quickly, and she wasn't prepared for it. As for Xianyuan Chang, she didn't even need to do anything before his consciousness was blurry from the explosion, and he lay on the ground riddled with wounds. The ancient dragon empress didn't know what to say anymore. What kind of King retard was this? Using self-detonation to fight to the death with me, is there a need for that? What? Brother Cheng. And Lin rushed forward with a concerned expression and picked up Xianyuan Chang before casting a healing spell technique on him. He looked at the charred man with a pained expression. Xianyuan Chang recovered a little before turning to the ancient dragon empress with anticipation etched on his face. Ancient dragon empress. What kind of expression is that? Do you want me to praise you? The ancient dragon empress grumbled internally, but a magnanimous smile appeared on her face. Classmate Xianyuan Cheng's aptitude is outstanding, and his true intent to detonate the heavens has left me in awe. If you want to detonate the heavens, then detonate yourself first. Sacrificing yourself for the sake of detonating the heavenly mandate will greatly stimulate one's potential. If you cultivate diligently, Your future will be limitless. She tossed out all of the best adjectives she could think of before turning to Xianyuan Cheng with a hint of resentment and concern in her eyes. Thank you, Teacher Ancient Dragon Empress, for your comments and encouragement. Xianyuan Cheng's will to fight had been ignited with a determined expression. Ancient Dragon Empress. She really wanted to tell him not to tell anyone that he was her student. The Ancient Dragon Empress was a little uneasy. Who's next? To be honest, she was feeling really depressed right now, and she really wanted to turn around and leave right away. What kind of retards were coming up one after another? However, he was her student, and she had to finish the test even with tears in her eyes. I'll do it. Sun Yulua raised his hand. The Ancient Dragon Empress was then given a massive fright by Sun Yulua's heaven-shocking technique. Sun Yulua was responsible for fighting, while the Blue Dream Sword Spirit was responsible for acting like a ghost. The Ancient Dragon Empress had been enraged, and she pinned him to the ground with her sword. After that, it was Xiao Hong's turn. Xiao Hong was going to destroy the heavens in the name of the sun. In her eyes, the sun was the most powerful, and nothing could compare with it. The sun came first, and then the heavens. The Ancient Dragon Empress had only just been blasted by Xianyuan Cheng once before being blasted by the sun again. Immediately afterward, it was Su Qianyin and Yi Ling's turn. Kill, kill, kill. Kill everything that they wanted to kill, including the heavens. They appeared and disappeared like ghosts, and they were able to unleash the full extent of their assassination skills. The Ancient Dragon Empress finally defeated Su Qianyin and Yi Ling, and her eyes were filled with exhaustion and astonishment. The mighty figures of the 4-9 Immortal sect were simply far too terrifying. All of them were supremely talented freaks. Rafaela was also no longer as calm and collected as before. She knew just how powerful the Ancient Dragon Empress was. In terms of heaven-crushing techniques, the Ancient Dragon Empress was only inferior to Cyril and Chanchin, but she had been forced into such a dire situation. It looked like she had to reevaluate the 4-9 Immortal sect at this moment. Bai Ling stepped onto the stage with a warm smile on her face. Unbeknownst to them, nightmare mode had only just begun. Teacher Ancient Dragon Empress, please enlighten me. Bai Ling extended a graceful curtsy. Bring it on. The Ancient Dragon Empress didn't want to say anything else. Her desire to take advantage of this opportunity to vent her frustration for her teaching career had faded away significantly. All she wanted to do now was defeat these students as quickly as possible so that she could conclude this cultivation session. Let me warn you, teacher. You have to use your full power against me. Otherwise, I'm afraid that I might accidentally wound you. Bai Ling spoke in a gentle, yet serious voice. You're afraid that you'll wound me? The Ancient Dragon Empress nodded with a smile. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Who is she? She was the 4th heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect, and she had once slain a representative of the heavenly Tao. Why would she be scared of a mere amateur? Even Xianyuan Cheng and the others had only managed to catch her off guard and inflict some minor injuries. Wounding her would be a joke. Bai Ling pulled out a device from her spatial magic tool and propped it up on the ground. It was pristine white, and it looked like a thick, long tube with the barrel of a cannon at its tip. This is what you've been working on for the past 10 days, the Ancient Dragon Empress asked. She knew that Bai Ling hadn't practiced any spell techniques during the past 10 days. Instead, she had been listening intently to the Ancient Dragon Empress lecture and taking notes. Then, she had written down some formulas and theories that even the Ancient Dragon Empress couldn't understand. She had also asked many questions that the Ancient Dragon Empress couldn't understand at that time. She was beginning to suspect that she was a fake teacher. That's right. I have to thank you for this, teacher. You gave me a lot of inspiration and allowed me to complete this device. If it weren't for the limitations of time, materials, and energy, it could be even more powerful. Be careful. Bai Ling pressed a hand against the long tube, and energy quickly converged toward it. The Ancient Dragon Empress hair stood on end as a boundless sense of danger engulfed her entire body. Heaven-crushing armor, heaven-crushing shield, heaven-crushing body enhancement technique. In that instant, the ancient dragon empress frantically fortified her defenses. It was also at this moment that the cannon exploded. A silvery white pillar of light pierced through the earth, pulverizing space and annihilating all things. The ancient dragon empress heaven-crushing shield, heaven-crushing armor, and heaven-crushing body enhancement technique were shattered one after another before puncturing her body. In the end, even the Tao integration stage protective formation behind her was punctured. The power of heaven-crushing pierced through the entire sect and extended into infinity and beyond. Dazzling mushroom clouds rose up from the mountain ranges thousands of kilometers away as energy soared into the heavens. How could this be? The ancient dragon empress' eyes widened with incredulity as she stared at the gaping hole in her waist. She couldn't defend herself against Bai Ling's heaven-crushing technique. The ancient dragon empress was completely dumbstruck. Raphaela's expression had also shifted to one of astonishment. Why, Master is the fourth heavenly disciple, the pillar of the heaven-crushing sect. How could she not defend herself? A faint smile appeared on Bai Ling's face, because when it comes to heaven-crushing techniques, the purple star is the true patriarch. Chapter 1494. Purple Star. The ancient dragon empress murmured. She finally understood. This woman had most likely inherited the core secrets of the purple star. In other words, was she trying to strut around in front of Patriarch Heaven Crushing? PFFF. The ancient dragon empress threw up another mouthful of blood. Master. Raphaela couldn't sit still any longer, and she immediately flashed toward the ancient dragon empress before unleashing a healing technique and a heart recovery technique. I've only just put this device into use, so it seems to be a little too powerful. Bai Ling silently put away the cannon with an apologetic expression. The ancient dragon empress drew a sharp intake of breath. Just a little too powerful. She would believe it if you said it could crush the heavens. Not only were the ancient dragon empress and Raphaela astonished, but even Su Qianyin, Xian Yuancheng, and the others were trembling uncontrollably. Big Sister Bai is still as scary as ever, Su Qianyin said in a mellow voice. The more gentle and amiable a woman is, the more terrifying she is when she's angry, woof. Bai spoke with a serious expression, and Lin stepped forward with an enraged expression. Big Sister Bai, you blew up my sect as well. You have to pay for it. Bai Ling rolled her eyes. All right, my cannon is aimed at an area with no people or buildings. At most, I'll repair the wall for you. The ancient dragon empress almost threw up another mouthful of blood upon hearing this. So she was trying to avoid her vitals, just to avoid the vitals of her sect? Bai Ling silently put away the cannon before turning to the ancient dragon empress with anticipation on her face. The ancient dragon empress' lips twitched slightly. You're going to go back after flexing. I really don't have the face to criticize you. She felt like she was about to lose all of her reputation as a teacher. Ahem. Big. Student Bai Ling, your heaven-crushing aptitude is already very high, so I don't have anything else to teach you. I hope you can continue to strive for greater heights. Everyone was shocked to hear this. What she was implying was that Bai Ling had already graduated from her tutelage, and Lin swallowed upon hearing this. As expected, Big Sister Bai was super fierce. Thank you for your guidance, Teacher Ancient Dragon Empress. Bai Ling bowed in an extremely graceful manner before retreating to the back. The Ancient Dragon Empress had helped her immensely, and the heaven-crushing sect had also made some critical improvements to the original Purple Star technology. She had benefited immensely from this. The ancient Dragon Empress injuries were finally healed by Raphaela, and she looked at the remaining students with an indescribable sense of panic in her heart. She forced herself to calm down as she consoled herself. Bai Ling's identity was special, which was why she was so terrifying. No matter what, the other students would be able to handle her. She was a teacher, the fourth heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect. How could he retreat in such a place? If others were to find out that he had been scolded by a student he had only taught for 10 days to the point where he didn't even dare to continue testing his abilities, wouldn't he be laughed at to death? "Who's next?" the ancient dragon empress asked. "Let me do it." A clear and melodious voice rang out. The ancient dragon empress looked up to discover an extremely beautiful fairy in a green dress flying toward her. She looked so cute, so she shouldn't be scary. The ancient dragon empress' heart eased slightly. She knew that Tina was an extremely rare member of the fairy tribe, but that didn't mean that she was extremely proficient in the Tao of crushing the heavens. Fairies were a race that loved nature and life. It would be more accurate to say that they obeyed the heavens and had nothing to do with crushing the heavens. "Teacher, ancient dragon empress, I'm up." Tina smiled sweetly. "Come on." The ancient dragon empress took a deep breath. Rafaela retreated to the edge of the drill ground. For some reason, she felt an indescribable sense of heartache at the sight of the ancient dragon empress. Tina stood in midair and closed her eyes. She put her hands together, and her semi-transparent golden wings fluttered lightly as divine light flowed over their surfaces. Whoosh, golden lines began to appear on her intricate forehead, forming a divine symbol. Tina's aura suddenly became ethereal and lofty. Even Enlin was beginning to find her unfathomable. It was as if she didn't exist in this world, or as if she had transcended to another dimension. The ancient dragon empress' eyes widened as a sense of foreboding welled up in her heart. Right at this moment, Tina's palms slowly parted to reveal a chaotic, twisted ball. This ball had no fixed shape. It was like an abyssal black hole, but it was also as dazzling as the sun. Light and darkness intertwined, imbuing it with the power of both destruction and rebirth. Thus, it gradually split apart before progressing toward destruction. "What the hell is this?" The ancient dragon empress' eyelids twitched as a chill ran down her spine. She discovered that not only was Bai Ling giving her a feeling of incomprehension, but even the spell technique unleashed by this fairy was beyond her imagination. This was a type of power that she had never encountered before. Ever since teacher taught me the heaven-crushing technique, I've been constantly modifying this technique in the divine mirror world. After all, there is nothing I can't do in that world. An extremely adorable and enticing smile appeared on Tina's face, as if she were a little demonic girl looking for excitement. She slowly pushed the ball of light toward the ancient dragon empress. "I'm the heavens. It seems like I'm quite good at researching how to kill myself. Go, chaotic heaven-crushing ball." Tina's voice was like a decree from the heavens. The chaotic ball of light flew toward the ancient dragon empress. A boundless chill engulfed the ancient dragon empress' entire body. The ancient dragon empress unleashed her most powerful heaven-crushing technique almost without any hesitation. Heaven-crushing technique. Heavenly Tao absolute reincarnation. The ancient dragon empress let loose an almighty roar as she unleashed all of her power. She gripped the air with one palm facing the sky and the other facing the earth, and between them was the extreme mystic heaven and earth. Whoosh, an absolute defensive barrier that was isolated from the samsara of heaven and earth formed around her. The ancient dragon empress had fallen into a peculiar space. From the perspective of Enlin and the others, the space where the ancient dragon empress was situated seemed to have lost all color and become black and white. This was the color of the beginning of the universe. Nothing was black, something was white, and black and white were the most primordial colors. Tina's chaotic heaven-crushing ball crashed into the ancient dragon empress, heavenly Tao absolute reincarnation. There was no violent clash or explosion. Instead, the ball of light continued to erode the defensive barrier, but an expression of shock and horror appeared on the ancient dragon empress' face. It was as if once the ball of light completely invaded her space, it would spell the end of everything. "Ah, The ancient dragon empress roared as she frantically unleashed all of her power. Master! This was the first time Rafaela had seen the ancient dragon empress fight with all her might, and she was tempted to rush over to help. Don't come any closer. It's dangerous. The ancient dragon empress yelled as she raised her heaven-crushing true intent to the very maximum. It was as if the entire dragon tribe was standing behind her, giving her power over and over again. Even so, the ball of light was still slowly seeping into her heaven-crushing technique. Even though it was getting smaller and smaller, it was still as dangerous as ever. The heavenly Tao absolute reincarnation was definitely not going to stop this chaotic heaven-crushing ball of light. The ancient dragon empress was still holding on with all her might. This was a battle of willpower. 1 minute later, the ball of light was finally ground into nothingness by the heavenly Tao spell technique. My spell technique has been blocked. Tina wiped the sweat from her forehead with a disappointed expression. She was a little disappointed that she wasn't able to do anything for Giant and Lin. Thump! The ancient dragon empress collapsed to the ground and panted heavily with tears streaming down her face. I'm done. I'm done. It's too terrifying. Chapter 1495. Master! Rafaela unleashed a healing technique and a heart-saving technique on the ancient dragon empress with a pained expression. The ancient dragon empress really didn't want to admit defeat, but she was really starting to panic. Tina stuck out her little tongue before flying toward the ancient dragon empress with concern. Teacher, are you all right? Being cared for by a student, the ancient dragon empress forced a smile onto her face and shook her head. I'm fine. I'm just a little tired. I want to rest now. Oh, that's true. You've fought so many battles in a row, so you have to take care of yourself. Don't collapse from exhaustion. Tina flew over to the ancient dragon empress, who was lying on the ground, and she held onto the ancient dragon empress' slender fingers with an innocent expression. Ancient dragon empress, don't you have any idea who the culprit is that almost caused my body to collapse from exhaustion? She was feeling a little fearful after that. If she hadn't defended herself against the fairy's attack with all her might, who knew what would have happened next? She stared at the fairy with shock and confusion on her face. Didn't you say that you were the heavens in the divine mirror world? Are you a god of creation? Tina chuckled as she recalled Lin's instructions, and she feigned a confused expression as she said, Did I say something like that? Why don't I remember? You must have heard wrong. Ancient dragon empress, can you please come up with a more convincing lie? Since the fairy didn't want to answer, she naturally wasn't going to pry any further. However, the 4-9 Immortal sect was becoming more and more mysterious and powerful in her heart. As expected, only a sect leader as frivolous as Lin could lead such a bunch of supremely talented prodigies. Even the ancient dragon empress had come to this conclusion, and her servant, Rafaela, was even more astonished. Rafaela knew that the ancient dragon empress had just unleashed the most powerful spell techniques of the heaven-crushing lineage. But even so, she had only just barely managed to block one of her opponent's attacks. Student Tina, your heaven-crushing aptitude is extremely freakish. If you continue to cultivate like this, you'll definitely see a whole new level of progress in the path of heaven-crushing. I have nothing more to teach you. The ancient dragon empress had not forgotten her criticism and began to provide an objective evaluation. Another student who had successfully completed his apprenticeship. He was the 4th heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect. Yet 2 of his students had already graduated after just 10 days of teaching. He didn't know whether he should be happy or sad. Thank you for your guidance, teacher, ancient dragon empress. Tina bowed with elation. The ancient dragon empress stood up again. Her features were a little pale, and she was clearly extremely exhausted. She looked at the students, not far away, with a complicated expression. She had thought that this was going to be a simple test that would allow the students to see just how high the heavens were and how deep the earth was. This was supposed to be the time for the ancient Dragon Empress to rise to power. But how did she end up like this? Apart from the first contestant, Yao Mingxi, whose aptitude was mediocre, the rest of the contestants were all extremely talented. This didn't make sense at all. The ancient Dragon Empress was very depressed, but unbeknownst to her, Yao Mingxi was even more depressed. It was quite normal for the ancient Dragon Empress to criticize him for his mediocre aptitude. 9 out of 10 mighty figures were like that, and he heaved a sigh of relief as a result. And then, with the F***CK, all the others after that had excellent or top-notch aptitudes. He was the only one with mediocre aptitude. Was there a problem somewhere? This was very heartbreaking. Yao Mingxi was a return to Void Stage Sword Immortal Mighty Figure, but he was about to crawl into a hole in the ground. He was the sect leader, and Lin was feeling a little elated at this moment. He was hoping that the powerful beings of the sect could set a good example and perform well in front of teacher Ancient Dragon Empress. Then, Bai Ling and Tina had done so, well, the Ancient Dragon Empress would probably be very pleased now, right? He turned toward the Ancient Dragon Empress, and a sense of respect welled up in his heart at the sight of her slightly haggard features. Thank you for your hard work, teacher Ancient Dragon Empress. The Ancient Dragon Empress was given a fright, and she turned toward Lin. Why are you suddenly bringing this up? Nothing. I just felt like you've worked hard, so I couldn't help but ask. And Lin looked at the Ancient Dragon Empress. Why was she reacting so strongly? Su Xiaolan made her way over with the phoenix. Teacher Ancient Dragon Empress, about Little Huang and my heaven-crushing techniques mastery. We'll talk about it another day. The Ancient Dragon Empress shuddered with excitement. Everyone. Tina and Bai Ling were already so terrifying, even though they weren't at the Dao integration stage. But this divine Phoenix Maiden and Phoenix were Dao integration stage super mighty figures. They were super bosses. Wouldn't their combined powers be terrifying? The Ancient Dragon Empress had completely forgotten that she was also a Dao integration stage super mighty figure. Oh, Su Xiaolan seemed to be a little dejected, and the excitement in her eyes gradually faded. However, she still asked with a hint of reluctance, when will it begin? The Ancient Dragon Empress faltered momentarily before a resolute expression appeared on her face. In 3 days. She would be able to resurrect with full health in 3 days. Her life and death would all be up to fate then. Wait, why am I getting this feeling? The Ancient Dragon Empress suddenly came to a realization. She was the 4th heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect. So how could she show weakness in front of her students? With this in mind, she was filled with shame and remorse, and her pride and battle intent rose again. She wasn't even afraid of the heavens, so why would she be afraid of a bird and a woman? 2 days, the Ancient Dragon Empress replied with a solemn expression. Huh. Everyone faltered upon hearing this. They didn't know what the Ancient Dragon Empress was talking about. I said the test for Su Xiaolan and the Phoenix's heaven-crushing aptitude will begin in 2 days. The Ancient Dragon Empress spoke with a resolute expression. And Lin, Su Xiaolan, has teacher Ancient Dragon Empress been traumatized by something? Isn't it just a test 1 day in advance? Why is she acting like this is a big deal. Only Raphaela knew that the Ancient Dragon Empress had truly been traumatized. The Ancient Dragon Empress was going to rest, and all of the pavilion lords and elders of the 4-9 Immortal sect bowed in unison. Thank you for your hard work, teacher Ancient Dragon Empress. Tears welled up in the Ancient Dragon Empress' eyes upon hearing her classmates' sincere words, and she fought back her tears. She wasn't moved by her classmates' politeness. Instead, she was shedding tears for her own bitter teaching experience. She had come to the 4-9 Immortal sect in high spirits, only to be scared witless by her students' heaven-crushing techniques. This was something that she had never even dared to imagine, but it was happening right before her eyes. The Ancient Dragon Empress breathing accelerated at the thought of this. The heaven-crushing sect had been completely humiliated by her. Hurry, Raphaela, use another life-saving spell technique. The ancient dragon empress breathing accelerated. Yes, master, Raphaela replied with a pained expression. And Lin couldn't help but sigh with emotion as he looked at the two women walking away. What a dutiful teacher. Chapter 1496. As long as one could memorize the most important mantras for the heaven-crushing techniques, then it would be up to one's aptitude and perseverance. Hence, after the ancient dragon empress left, all of the 4-9 immortal sect powerful beings continued to practice diligently. And Lin made his way over to Su Xiaolan with a curious expression. What heaven-crushing techniques are you cultivating? Su Xiaolan turned to look at Lin with a mischievous smile on her face. It's related to you, but I'm not telling you. This was a little annoying, and Lin was very touched by her teasing, and he latched onto Su Xiaolan's arm again. However, Su Xiaolan refused to tell him. He had no choice but to turn to the phoenix in the distance. Little Huang, what is your heaven-crushing techniques? The phoenix glanced at Lin with a haughty expression. Chirp, chirp, chirp. And Lin, all right, he didn't understand. He gave up. He would just wait for the test in 2 days. In any case, Su Xiaolan would be able to show him her spell techniques when the time came. In this test, everyone had revealed something, and Lin was like a curious baby interviewing everyone. Big Brother Cheng, Big Brother Cheng, how did you go from being an explosive genius to a self-destructing soldier? And Lin asked with a curious expression. Xian Yuan Cheng didn't want to say anything, so he tossed a bomb at Lin. Boom! And Lin was blasted back several dozen meters. He tumbled to the ground and was just in time to see Su Qianyun's dress. However, he was only able to see Su Qianyun's dress as she was wearing a long dress, and Lin looked up at her smooth, well-proportioned calves with a curious expression. Su Qianyun, you're such a beautiful and gentle girl. How did you become an emotionless killer? Huh, really? Su Qianyun faltered momentarily before blinking her dreamy blue eyes adorably. She said in a mellow voice, No, I have feelings. And Lin nodded upon hearing this. Thankfully, Su Qianyun didn't admit to it. Su Qianyun tapped her chin with a faint smile. It's just that some pieces of trash don't deserve to exist in this world, so they have to be destroyed. Gasp! And Lin drew a sharp intake of breath as a chill ran down his spine. He felt like he shouldn't bully Su Qianyun in the future. The more innocent a girl was, the scarier to him. He didn't know where she learned her sickly look from. Junior student Yao Mingxi, what are your thoughts on the evaluation that you have the most ordinary aptitude out of all of us? And Lin started to change the subject of the interview. Yao Mingxi, who was already disappointed, almost vomited blood when he heard this. Why did his idol purposely come to stab him in the back? No, I can't let my idol look down on me, he said with a serious expression. I'm not the worst out of everyone here. I'm not the only one who was evaluated as having an ordinary aptitude. Dabai is the same. Dabai shuddered. Are you trying to hurt each other? Woof. And Lin shook his head and said, Dabai is a dog, not a human. You have the worst aptitude out of everyone. Dabai. Yao Mingxi instantly broke down. Sob, sob, sob. This sect is full of monsters. How can a normal person like me live? What else can I do, huh? Looking at his junior, who was gradually breaking down, and Lin was too embarrassed to continue hurting him, he walked to the other side, where a table had been moved out. The woman in white was wearing holographic glasses and was writing and drawing on the table. Big Sister Bai, your heaven-crushing cannon was so powerful. Did the purple star use that cannon to blast a hole in the sky? And Lin asked in a quiet voice. Bai Ling adjusted her glasses with a mysterious smile on her face. That's the worst time the purple star has ever been slandered. Can this thing compare to the purple star's ultimate weapon? And Lin scratched his head. Then can you build an ultimate weapon? Bai Ling shrugged. Not very likely. I don't have any equipment, resources, or manpower. You have to realize that the Purple Star tribe was only able to use the ultimate weapon after mobilizing all of their resources. How am I supposed to do that on my own? And Lin looked deeply into Bai Ling's eyes. You didn't completely deny it. You used the word, not very likely, which means that you have the most important technology and method, right? Bai Ling pursed her lips and turned toward the northeast. She didn't deny this and nodded. And Lin knew that this was a good opportunity to have a heart-to-heart talk with Bai Ling, so he pulled over a small stool and shamelessly sat down beside Bai Ling, just like how they would sit next to each other in school. He turned to look at Bai Ling's beautiful profile and asked curiously, "Big Sister Bai, is it time for you to tell me your true identity?" Bai Ling looked into the distance with a smile. True identity? Didn't you already know that? I'm the mastermind of the 88th Purple Star Research Institute. In the past, I would have believed you. And Lin smiled and said, but now that I think about it, the entire Purple Star tribe is dead, and you're the only one left alive. That's definitely not a coincidence. The more I come into contact with it, the more I understand just how terrifying the heavenly Tao is. The punishment of the heavenly Tao involves karma and encompasses the entire universe. How could an ordinary research institute mastermind like you possibly avoid it? You're not just a fish that escaped the net. There's a very good chance that you're an extremely important person that the entire Purple Star civilization is trying to protect. Now that I've seen you create the heaven-crushing cannon that can break through the ancient Dragon Empress' heaven-crushing true intent, I'm even more convinced of this. Bai Ling glanced at Lin with a faint smile. What's there to be proud of about breaking through the ancient Dragon Empress defenses? Your little fairy can do it as well. And Lin shook his head. The ancient Dragon Empress is no small fry. She is the fourth heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect and one of the most powerful heaven-crushing techniques. You were able to break through her defenses with heaven-crushing power, which means that you've already mastered the core heaven-crushing technology. Furthermore, you said that you've even mastered the technology for the Purple Star's ultimate weapon. That's a little terrifying. You're basically the most important part of the Purple Star civilization. What was the most important thing for a technological civilization? It wasn't resources, it wasn't manpower, and it definitely wasn't the environment. It was technology. It was the knowledge that led directly to the essence of the world. Bai Ling had all of the most important things in the Purple Star civilization. No matter how insensitive Lin was, he knew that Bai Ling was no ordinary person. No, she was extremely extraordinary. After a moment of silence, the woman beside Lin heaved a light sigh of relief. She turned her head to the side, and a hint of seriousness appeared on her beautiful features. You want to know? And Lin nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. Bai Ling spoke in a soft voice, so be it. You've given me so much warmth and trust in me during these past few years. You've never asked me what I'm doing here, so I don't want to hide anything from you. I'm actually not a Purple Star citizen. Chapter 1497. And Lin had always thought that Bai Ling was the most important person in the Purple Star civilization. Now, Bai Ling's words had completely shattered his suspicions. After a brief moment of shock, and Lin became even more curious about Bai Ling. Ew, you're not even a Purple Star citizen, then who are you? Bai Ling smiled. You're right about one thing. I am a life form that the entire Purple Star civilization is trying to protect. My brain capacity is hundreds of millions of times that of a normal, highly intelligent being, and I possess all of the knowledge of the Purple Star civilization. I am the seed of the entire civilization. It's a pity that in order to protect myself, a lot of my knowledge is still sealed away and needs to be slowly unlocked. I also need time to get used to it, and Lin was a little entranced. This big sister, Bai really did have a powerful background. The backlash from the heavenly Tao did indeed completely annihilate the Violet Star tribe. They were completely wiped out. If the heavens wanted to kill, why would they leave anyone alive? However, I'm not a Purple Star citizen. I'm a new human created by the Purple Star civilization. I'm the most perfect human being that a civilization can achieve, Bai Ling continued. And Lin shot a glance at Bai Ling with incredulity. You're the most perfect human being? You're a demon who's gentle on the surface, but you're actually extremely evil on the inside, and you're the most perfect human being. A cold chuckle sounded. All of a sudden, he felt a cold sensation on his neck. A particle cutter had appeared on his neck. Bai Ling narrowed her eyes with a smile. I'll give you another chance to rephrase your sentence. And Lin's body shuddered. Bai Ling's smile was very beautiful, but he felt like he had been targeted by the Grim Reaper. If he failed to rephrase a sentence, he could guarantee that the thread would fall mercilessly. He immediately corrected himself. Big Sister Bai is so gentle, beautiful, generous, considerate, and intelligent. No matter if it's her appearance or personality, there's not a single flaw to be found. How could she not be the most perfect human? In my eyes, you're the most perfect human being. And Lin's voice was filled with conviction. Bai Ling finally put down the thread in her hand upon hearing this before looking at him with a smile. Please continue. And Lin swallowed a mouthful of saliva and said weakly, Women were unreasonable when they were angry. If he didn't lower his head now, a fight would be inevitable. For the harmony of the sect, for the continuous development of the sect leader, and for the survival of the human race, and Lin could only choose to swallow the humiliation, grovel, and endure hardships. I'm an artificial life form. I have no bloodline or genetic connection with the Purple Planet, so I was able to escape the Heavenly Tao's backlash. I have all the characteristics that a life should have. Not only do I have a physical body, but I also have a soul and a unique Tao. I am actually the same as all of you. Bai Ling turned to Enlin and continued, If you really want to point out a difference, then it's just that she's a little smarter, a little nicer, a little prettier, and a little more talented. And Lin's face couldn't help but twitch. Was she so mischievous? You're right. He thought for a moment, then nodded and praised. On the surface, he was smiling, but in his heart he was cursing. I am the spark of the Purple Star civilization, but at the same time, I also have my own mission. Mission? To revive the Purple Star civilization? And Lin asked. All of the Purple Star civilization has perished. I'm just a fake Purple Star civilization. How am I supposed to revive it? A resigned smile appeared on Bai Ling's face. The continuation of a civilization was not just the continuation of knowledge and spirit. The continuation of bloodlines was also an indispensable part of it. If the bloodline had been severed, then it really couldn't be considered a revival. What I want to do is to make up for the mistake that the Purple Star civilization made. Bai Ling raised her head and looked up into the sky as she murmured, I want to mend the heavens. And Lin almost fell off his chair in fright. Huh? What did you say? I said, I, Bai Ling, want to mend the heavens. Bai Ling enunciated each and every word in a clear voice, and Lin knew that he had not misheard her, but he still found it a little difficult to believe that Bai Ling would choose to mend the heavens in a situation where everyone was bent on destroying the heavens. My divine Tao is not the Tao of space, nor is it the Tao of information calculation. Instead, it is the Tao of a civilization. The Purple Star civilization bestowed its spark upon me, and it is continuing on in a special way. My Tao is known as the Purple Star Tao. I can sense the remorse of all the living beings of the Purple Star civilization in their final moments, crying like helpless and despairing children. But in the end, there's no turning back. I can hear their final wish, which is to make up for their mistakes. Children who have made mistakes always want to be forgiven by their adults. Children who have accidentally stabbed their adults are filled with horror and remorse. They kneel to the ground and clutch at their wounds, hoping that their parents will be appeased in their final moments. A smile appeared on Bai Ling's face. How pitiful and foolish. This was the first time that Lin had heard Bai Ling criticize her Purple Star civilization in such a straightforward manner. Was this really the spark of the Purple Star civilization? So you're planning to join the heaven-mending sect? And Lin was a little concerned. Bai Ling shook her head decisively. No need, I'll do my own research. During these past few years, I've actually researched many things and made many preparations. She looked at Lin with a hesitant expression, and Lin heaved a sigh of relief. All right, I'll support you as long as you can save the human race. A smile blossomed on Bai Ling's face. Yes, sect leader. There was one thing that she didn't say. It was Lin's performance in the Dark Research Institute 100 years ago that gave her the courage to take this step. After that, Lin didn't pry any further. He had already learned Bai Ling's true identity, as well as her objective, so everything else wasn't important. For example, if he were to ask her how to mend the heavens, she would just toss out a bunch of theories, and Lin would listen to her like an idiot. There was no point in doing that. Thus, Big Sister Bai's interview came to an end, and Lin began to interview his little fairy. Little Na, how did you come up with such a powerful, heaven-crushing, true intent? You didn't really experiment on yourself in the divine mirror world, did you? And Lin asked with a curious expression. A smug expression appeared on Tina's face. That's right. I'm the heavens in the divine mirror world, and I used my omnipotent abilities in the divine mirror world to research how to crush the heavens and kill myself. I have to admit, I really am a prodigy. I really did kill myself. And Lin almost threw up a mouthful of blood. Prodigy, my A***S. What's there to be proud of? Are you all right now? I'm fine. I've been resurrected in the divine mirror world. I've been resurrected with full health. Tina smiled in consolation, and Lin still felt like this little fairy's train of thought was a little too wild, and he tried to help her establish the correct outlook on life, values, and cultivation. Time flew by. 2 days flew by very quickly. Finally, the battle between Su Xiaolan and the ancient Dragon Empress commenced. Chapter 1498. After 2 days of recuperation, the ancient Dragon Empress had made a perfect recovery, regardless of whether it was her physical injuries or the damage to her confidence. She was now an awe-inspiring teacher, the high and mighty fourth heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect. She was going to show her students that their teacher was still their teacher. Her authority was going to be restored today. All of the 4-9 Immortal sect return to Void Stage mighty figures had already gathered on the drill ground. And Lin also held Su Xiaolan's little hand as he offered words of encouragement. Don't be too nervous. Just do your best. In my heart, you're the best. Su Xiaolan couldn't help but roll her eyes. Why do you look like I'm about to take a test? Isn't this just a chance to demonstrate your progress in learning the heaven-crushing techniques? This is an exam. The ancient Dragon Empress is the examiner, so you have to work hard and leave a deep impression on her. And Lin spoke with a solemn expression. The ancient Dragon Empress' eyelids twitched upon hearing this. However, her Tao heart was resolute, and she quickly repressed her feelings of unease as she looked at Su Xiaolan with a confident expression. Su Xiaolan and the Phoenix had appeared at the same time. Everyone knew that the Phoenix would always participate in battles between the divine Phoenix Maiden, so the ancient Dragon Empress was not surprised. After all, she had told the students that they could team up to fight her if they were scared. However, the ancient Dragon Empress still had a lot of complaints in her heart. Your AF** King Tao integration stage, super mighty figure. How can you not be scared? 2 Tao integration stage, super mighty figures bullying a single teacher. Teacher, ancient Dragon Empress, please enlighten me. Su Xiaolan extended a respectful salute. Chirp, the Phoenix chimed in. The ancient Dragon Empress also extended a respectful salute before looking at the two of them with a solemn expression. She had learned that the 4-9 Immortal Sex curriculum was nightmare difficulty, but she wasn't one to back down easily. Otherwise, She wouldn't be able to bear the title of heaven-crushing sect, heavenly disciple. Come. The ancient dragon empress spoke with a frosty aura. Right at this moment, Tina's voice transmission talisman suddenly lit up. She picked up the voice transmission talisman, upon which an urgent male voice sounded. Bad news, goddess! A large-scale battle has erupted in the gem state. The heavenly human tribe, the blood tribe, and the void spirit tribe have a combined army of 30 million. Qiuguang City has already fallen, and over half of the kingdom of the 9 states united army has perished. The 4 returned to void stage generals of the realm pavilion, Tianshi, Long Kuei, Nenlinhua, and Zhongqinggu, as well as the return to void stage General Felisa of the blood pavilion, as well as the 6 other returned to void stage mighty figures of the kingdom of the 9 states, have all perished in battle. I'm running toward Nanchao City right now, and they're chasing me. Ah! Before he could finish his words, a blood-curdling scream sounded. The voice-transmitting talisman was cut off. The scene was silent. The ancient dragon empress, Su Xiaolan, and the phoenix also stopped their confrontation and turned toward Tina. What happened to the heavenly human tribe on the southern front? They actually mobilized the entire army? Lu Qianhuan recalled that the heavenly human tribe united army on the southern front had always been advancing slowly and steadily. It was extremely rare to see such a massive army of tens of millions being deployed. Everyone fell silent as grave expressions appeared on their faces. Even though no Dao integration stage super mighty figures had perished, over half of the united army had perished, including 11 returned to void stage mighty figures. This was already an extremely heavy blow to the human army. Tina took a glance at Enlin before standing up. Giant Enlin, I'm going to set off now. The Realm Pavilion is responsible for the southern front, so I can't go without them. Cassidy and Merlin also stepped forward. The Blood Pavilion and Realm Pavilion were both responsible for guarding the southern front, so they had to provide reinforcements. Don't be in such a hurry, Enlin suddenly said. There was a hint of eagerness in his eyes as he met everyone's confused gazes. Why don't we do something big? Do something big? How? Lu Qianhuan's purple eyes were also a little excited. Don't we have so many people here? And Lin smiled. Let's go together and wipe out the heavenly human tribe united army on the southern front. Gasp! Everyone sucked in a mouthful of cold air when they heard this. Even the ancient dragon empress and Rafaela were a little dumbstruck, as if they had misheard. And Lin, what are you talking about? Tina murmured. Do you know how terrifying the heavenly human tribe united army on the southern front is? Setting aside the number of troops, just the most powerful forces we've seen so far include hundreds of soul-piercing stage generals, a dozen or so heaven pioneer stage great generals, and even the legendary divine heaven stage and a representative of the heavenly Tao. Xianyuan Qing spoke in an urgent voice. Don't do anything rash. I'm not rash. And Lin looked around at everyone. Sometimes the balance of a war can be completely reversed at a critical juncture, and my return is the catalyst for that. Everyone's hearts stirred upon hearing this. However, Su Xiaolan immediately poured a bucket of cold water on everyone's hopes. All of us are being monitored by the heavenly human tribe united army. If we appear on any of the other battlefields, their strategy will change accordingly. The northern front is extremely important. If Little Huang and I appear on the southern front, the heavenly human tribe united army on the northern front will definitely seize this opportunity to launch a counterattack, and the northern front could very well collapse. In other words, Little Huang and I cannot be absent from the northern front. At this point, the war had developed into a situation where the powerful beings on both sides were mutually restricting one another. If a change were to occur, it would be very easy for the situation to change as a whole. If Little Lan and Little Huang can't get away, then even if we join in with Enlin, we'll only be able to make the heavenly human tribe united army suffer a minor setback at most. I don't think we'll be able to wipe out the entire Heavenly Human Tribe United Army on the southern front. Su Qianyan was clearly not very confident either. No one had thought about gathering their forces to break through one of the battlefields first. However, the reality was that the resistance they were facing was far more powerful than they had imagined. Who said, "I'm the only one joining in"? And Lin smiled and said, "The Celestial Arch, the Great Empress, Shangguan Yi, and Meng Ji have all returned with me. We're all waiting to give them a surprise." Sure enough, everyone's eyes lit up upon hearing this. That's right. I almost forgot about them. The Celestial Arch, the most powerful being in the Kingdom of the Nine States, has reappeared. What will that be like? Xian Yuancheng was extremely excited. There's also the Great Empress of the Snow Maidens. She's also a very powerful Dao integration stage super mighty figure. With Meng Ji and Shangguan Yi, we'll be able to increase our combat prowess significantly. Su Xiaolan nodded in agreement. Even if we can't wipe out the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army on the southern front, we'll at least be able to inflict some serious damage on them. Merlin was also very excited as flames burned in his eyes. I said we're going to wipe out the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army on the southern front, so I'll definitely do it. And Lin wore an extremely serious expression as he turned to Su Xiaolan and the Phoenix. You two come with me. That way, we'll have more synergy. I'll arrange for the Great Empress, Meng Ji, and Shangguan Yi to take over your defensive duties. That way, we'll be able to give the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army on the northern front a surprise. Su Xiaolan's eyes lit up. That's a good idea. When Su Xiaolan had descended from the heavens and entered the southern front, the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army on the northern front had thought that the northern front of the Kingdom of the Nine States was undefended, so they wanted to take advantage of this opening. However, a few extremely powerful snow maidens had suddenly appeared at this moment, and they would definitely be able to achieve a miraculous result on the battlefield with this in mind. The flames of battle ignited in everyone's hearts. They were clearly looking forward to the upcoming battles. However, Lin showed no signs of stopping. He turned to the ancient Dragon Empress and Rafaela with an extremely sincere and benevolent smile on his face. Chapter 1499. The ancient Dragon Empress and Rafaela could sense Lin's scorching gaze. They seemed to have figured out what Lin was trying to do. Teacher, ancient Dragon Empress, Rafaela, are you not going to participate in such an earth-shattering event? And Lin extended an invitation with a smile. The ancient Dragon Empress shook her head. I'm afraid not. Rafaela and I are only responsible for teaching, and we also have to act as the trump cards of the heaven-crushing sect to deter the Heavenly Human Tribe. It's not the right time to go. Their current status was similar to that of the Heavenly Human Tribe's divine, heaven-stage powerful beings and heavenly god clones. Once they did, heaven and earth would crumble, and this was a battle that could decide the course of the entire war. As such, both sides were extremely cautious, and Lin was naturally aware of this. For example, Cyril of the heaven-crushing sect and Nuwa of the heaven-mending sect had even more restrictions, and they would most likely only participate when it was time to crush the heavens or mend the heavens. He didn't say anything in response to the ancient Dragon Empress' refusal. Instead, he dialed a voice transmission. The voice transmission was quickly connected. Hey, Chen Chen, the Southern Front is in a dire situation. Are you going to participate? And Lin asked. Well, I'm afraid it's not the right time for me to participate. It's not a good thing to expose my power too early. Chun Chen hesitated momentarily before replying. The ancient Dragon Empress and Rafaela nodded upon hearing this. As the second heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect, it was clearly not the right time for Chen Chen to participate. And Lin spoke in a cold voice. I'm going to participate as well. I plan to destroy the entire southern front of the Heavenly Human Tribe. Senior student Chen Chen, are you really not coming? You're coming as well? Chen Chen seemed to be a little excited. Let's go together. And Lin continued, "Our opponents could be very powerful. Call on teacher, ancient Dragon Empress, and Rafaela as well. Let's attack together, and we'll be able to cut through metal." "I feel like," Chin Chin said slowly, "you're right. Ancient Dragon Empress, Rafaela." "No, this is not the second heavenly disciple I know." The ancient Dragon Empress and Rafaela roared in their hearts. Why was it that Chen Chen's attitude had changed so drastically after encountering Lin? "You want to go together?" It felt like Chin Chin was Lin's follower. What was going on? What was even more tragic was that even at a time like this, Lin hadn't forgotten to drag the ancient Dragon Empress and Rafaela down with him. His refusal just then was completely useless. He had been slapped in the face at the speed of light. "Master and disciple are of one mind. Can I expel them from the sect?" The ancient Dragon Empress spoke expressionlessly. She felt like she had been led into a trap by Lin, and she felt like she was about to throw up a mouthful of blood. As expected, a few seconds later, the ancient Dragon Empress voice transmission talisman sounded. Chun Chin discussed with her about attacking the heavenly human tribe on the southern front. The ancient Dragon Empress only ended the voice transmission after a short while. She looked up at the sky sadly. When did it start? The ancient Dragon Empress thought about it for a moment, and she felt like her tragic dragon life had begun ever since she entered the 4-9 Immortal sect. "Please calm down first." Rafaela could sense that something was amiss with the ancient Dragon Empress emotions, and she immediately unleashed a heart resuscitation technique. "This isn't actually a bad thing. The heavenly human tribe is currently attacking the human race from 5 different fronts. Aside from the Western Front, which is being defended by the West Sea Alliance, all of the other 4 fronts are approaching the Kingdom of the 9 States, and some of them have even entered the Kingdom of the 9 States. If we can severely wound the heavenly human tribe on one of these fronts, it would be extremely beneficial to the human race." Rafaela's voice was like a gentle spring. She didn't think that they would be able to completely wipe out the heavenly human tribe on one of their fronts, so she only used the word severely wound. The ancient Dragon Empress nodded upon hearing her words of consolation. She understood this logic, but she still couldn't help but feel a little depressed at this moment, and Lin had already called the Celestial Darch and Shangguan Yi. And Lin, "Hey, Celestial Darch, what's wrong? You sound like you're quite down in the dumps." "I'm fine." "And Lin, your 4-9 Immortal sect really is amazing. You're still able to remain true to yourself in the face of such temptations." And Lin was quite perplexed by the Celestial Thearch's words of praise. Only after a long while did he come to his senses. Of the entire Celestial Court, the Celestial Court seemed to be the only one that wasn't a member of the Heaven-Crushing sect. Thankfully, there were still sects like the 4-9 Immortal sect that refused to join the Heaven-Crushing sect, which was the only source of warmth for the Celestial Darch. "And Lin, what do you want from me?" The Celestial Thearch's voice was very gentle, and Lin revealed his plan to attack the southern front to the Celestial Darch. The Celestial Darch was silent for a long time upon hearing that the ancient Dragon Empress and Chen Chin were going to participate in this operation as well, but he still agreed in the end. And Lin also contacted Shangguan Yi via voice transmission talisman and asked her to take the Great Empress and Mengji with her in order to take Su Xiaolan's place to defend the northern front. She didn't hesitate at all and immediately agreed. She was very straightforward, and Lin held a special place in Shangguan Yi's heart. Shangguan Yi wouldn't refuse any of his requests. Thus, an extermination team was officially established. No one knew what kind of earth-shattering changes this extermination team was going to unleash on the entire Tai Chu continent, and Lin looked at everyone, and a sense of pride welled up in his heart. Su Xiaolan, Little Huang, the ancient Dragon Empress, Rafaela, Dabai, Xiaohong, Merlin, Cassidy, Xianyuan Cheng, Su Qianyan, Yiling, Tina, Lu Qianhuan, Sun Yulua, Yao Mingxi, and Bai Ling. There was also the Celestial Darch and Chun Chin, who were preparing to rendezvous with them in the Gem State. These were the members of the extermination team. Even though it was a small team, it was not a small team at all. On the contrary, if this team were to be made known to the world, they would definitely tremble in fear, as this was a team that could rival any top-rate force on the continent, like the Celestial Court. We're going to encounter a lot of dangers in this battle. If possible, I really don't want all of you to be involved in this battle. And Lin spoke in a slow voice. The ancient dragon empress' lips twitched upon hearing this. You were the one who dragged me here by force. However, the heavenly human tribe has already invaded the kingdom of the 9 states and is slaughtering our brethren. Many of our sect disciples and other comrades have already sacrificed their lives to build a great wall of flesh and blood at the border of the kingdom of the 9 states. As the #1 immortal sect in the kingdom of the 9 states, what reason do we have to back down now? I'm back, and it's time for the 4-9 immortal sect's sword to be unsheathed. Everyone, please come with me to reinforce the Gem State. Battle the heavens. Destroy the heavenly human tribe. And Lin clenched his fists high into the air as he spoke in a thunderous voice. Everyone's battle intent surged upon seeing this. Battle the heavens. Destroy the heavenly human tribe. Battle the heavens. Destroy the heavenly human tribe. Battle the heavens. Destroy the heavenly human tribe. Woof! And Lin. Chapter 1500. Bai immediately shut his mouth when he realized that he had misbehaved. He stared at Enlin with an innocent expression on his face. Let's go! And Lin couldn't be bothered to argue with him. He looked up into the southern sky and announced, Let's go! The cry of a phoenix erupted into the heavens. The divine flame extended to the ends of the sky like a red carpet. All of the disciples could see the spectacular spectacle of the phoenix flying out of the 4-9 immortal sect. However, what they didn't see was that there was a team of about a dozen people on the phoenix's back. They were the extermination team that was going to kill all of the heavenly human tribe, powerful beings on the southern front, within the Gem State in the southwestern region of the Kingdom of the 9 States. Xiaoguang City was a large city on the border of the Gem State. The city walls extended for over 500 kilometers, like a massive dormant dragon. A massive yin-yang slaughter spell formation enshrouded the entire city, which could unleash power comparable to a full-force attack from a Dao integration stage super mighty figure. It was once the largest city in the Gem State of the Kingdom of the 9 States. It was also the home of one of the 9 Imperials, the divine agriculture imperial family. But now, the city had been reduced to a sea of flames. The Great Formation had been destroyed, and the once colossal immortal Cultivator, the majestic imperial family that had suppressed an entire province, had been reduced to ruins. Countless living beings passed away amidst the screams of pain and agony, and blood dyed the entire city red. Several million cultivators of the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army perished during the battle, and they were forced to retreat toward Nanchao City in the end. Immediately afterward, a brutal massacre ensued. Xiaoguang City was huge, and close to 100 million humans were wailing in despair. In the face of an army of close to 30 million, they didn't even have a chance to run. Their bodies were punctured by pillars of white light, and their blood was sucked dry by crimson-robed living beings. Their bodies were entangled by ghostly figures, and their vitality was severed amid horror and despair. Blood, despair, howls, and souls were destroyed one by one. Fresh lives were being slaughtered wantonly and trampled on. Their enemy didn't seem to have any intention of leaving anyone alive. They were determined to turn Xiaoguang City into a city of the dead. This was actually one of the principles of the heavenly human tribe. Wherever their army went, all humans would be destroyed. An army of 30 million was a terrifying force. Even after a great battle, they had only lost about 3 million soldiers. They still had more than 26 million soldiers. 6 million soldiers were crazily slaughtering the creatures in the city who did not have time to escape, while the remaining 20 million soldiers continued to pursue the fleeing troops of the 9 States Coalition Army. The heavenly human tribe forces on the southern front were unleashed in full force, and in conjunction with the forces of the Blood Tribe and the Void Spirit Tribe, they were able to break through the dual defenses of the Snake Spirit Clan and the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army of the Spirit Lake Realm. Blood flowed through the Kingdom of the 9 States like a hot knife through butter, and it was as if they were going to change the course of the war for the last several decades. The cold and emotionless heavenly human tribe, the bloodthirsty and violent Blood Tribe, and the twisted and insane Void Spirit Tribe had undoubtedly become the nightmare of the Kingdom of the 9 States. The people of the Kingdom of the 9 States struggled and resisted, but they were powerless to do anything. On the 2 battlefields, the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army of the Kingdom of the 9 States and the Snake Spirit Clan of the Spirit Lake Realm were both facing the most ferocious attacks at the same time. All of the major armies were retreating in a frenzy, and who could save them? The young man who had sworn to resist had his head pierced through by the light beam and died. The children on the ground howled and wailed before their blood was sucked dry by the bloodthirsty Blood Tribe cultivators. The elderly man who was limping away was tortured to death by the Void Spirit Tribe cultivators. This was a one-sided massacre. Xiaoguang City had been transformed into a living hell. Meanwhile, in Nanchao City, which was 30,000 kilometers away from Xiaoguang City, this was the second largest city in the Gem State, as well as the most important gate into the Kingdom of the 9 States. The retreating human army had established a second line of defense here. Emperor Changsheng had already set up an extremely powerful Dao integration stage formation in the city, and he was stationed on the city wall with sect leader Zhu Xuze, Grand Elder Citiphone, and a group of return to void stage mighty figures of over 5 million cultivators. This was an extremely powerful force. However, all of their expressions were dark and gloomy. The sun was clearly shining brightly, but everyone felt as if there were dark clouds weighing down upon them. Some of the more mentally weak cultivators were even trembling uncontrollably. They had to face several hundred soul-piercing stage generals who were just barely comparable to return to void stage mighty figures, a dozen or so Heaven Pioneer stage great generals who were just barely comparable to Dao integration stage mighty figures, and there were even legendary divine heaven stage and representatives of the heavenly Dao. Aside from that, there was also the combined army of the Blood Tribe and the Void Spirit Tribe, even though the Snake Spirit Clan of the Spirit Lake Realm was taking some of the pressure off of them. Even if they had to face half of the Heavenly Human Tribe's forces, they would still be finding it hard to breathe. What do we do? Are there any reinforcements from other places? Zhu Xuze's body was riddled with wounds, but he still stood tall and straight, and he looked into the distance with a cold expression on his face. Emperor Changsheng shook his head with a forlorn expression. The Heavenly Human Tribe seems to have reached an agreement. Battles have erupted on all fronts, and they're all on a very large scale. They don't seem to want to wait any longer. Zhu Xuze fell silent upon hearing this, and his expression became extremely grave. The human army had been on the back foot from the get-go. If it weren't for the fact that they were wary of the heaven-crushing sect and those gods of creation, this war would have most likely been over long ago. Now, were they finally going to adjust their battle plan? What do the 4-9 immortal sects, other top-rate powerful beings, say? Sidufeng asked. Every bit of help they could get was good news. I can't get through to their voice transmission talismans. A disappointed expression appeared on Zhu Xuze's face. The current situation was that their enemies were too powerful, and no matter how much they tried, they couldn't compare to their enemies. If they tried to take their enemies down with them, it was very likely that they would all be wiped out. All of the cultivators on the city wall had already gotten into formation again, but the atmosphere was becoming more and more oppressive. They couldn't back down in this battle. If Nanchao City was breached, the Kingdom of the 9 States really would fall into the enemy's hands. Hundreds of millions, if not billions, of human beings would be slaughtered. Just as the atmosphere was becoming more and more oppressive, a voice suddenly sounded. Her Majesty will definitely come. The voice was clear and gentle. Zhu Xuze raised his head and turned to discover a handsome man with a transcendent aura. He knew that this man was Adam of the 4-9 Immortal Sect's Realm Pavilion, and he was a mighty figure at the return to Void pinnacle stage. His combat prowess was extremely terrifying, and he was basically invincible below the Tao integration stage. If he and his wife, Eve, fought alongside each other, they could even defeat Heaven Pioneer stage great generals of the heavenly human tribe. Our goddess will definitely lead us to victory. An extremely beautiful woman walked over gracefully. Her face was filled with an unquestionable expression. This woman was none other than Eve of the Realm Pavilion. For some reason, Zhu Xuze felt a little more at ease at the sight of the two of them. Her Majesty, she was mysterious, powerful, and revered by countless powerful beings. She really could be referred to as a goddess. Such an extraordinary woman was only that man's beast pet. If that man were here, then perhaps they would have a better chance of defending this city. Zhu Xuze thought back to that figure that seemed to be very far away, yet also as if it had only happened yesterday. Boom, boom, boom. Divine lightning suddenly exploded in the sky, as if the heavens were roaring with rage and delivering punishment. The white sky, the crimson earth, and the inky black sky quickly approached Nanchao City. Zhu Xuze took a deep breath. They're here. Chapter 1501. With his powerful spiritual consciousness, Zhu Xuze was able to perceive the number of enemies. There were at least 20 million heavenly human tribe, blood tribe, and void spirit tribe armies. There were only 3 million heavenly human tribe soldiers, and the rest were all blood tribe and void spirit tribe armies. However, in terms of quality, the heavenly human tribe was the most terrifying. There were 8 Heaven Pioneer stage great generals, 260 soul piercing stage generals, 100,000 arcane body stage powerful beings, and close to 3 million chi refining stage soldiers. In particular, the heavenly human tribe was extremely proficient in combination attacks. 3 great generals who were just barely comparable to Tao integration stage super mighty figures were able to hold their own against a veteran Tao integration stage super mighty figure. Aside from that, Emperor Yi Deng and Empress Helen of the Blood Tribe, as well as Emperor Beixing of the Void Spirit Tribe, had also appeared in the distance, exuding vast and terrifying divine might in terms of top combat power alone. The 9 states' allied forces were at an absolute disadvantage. Zhu Xuze knew that they couldn't back down anymore. If Nanchao City was conquered, then the heavenly human tribe united army would be like wolves in a pen of sheep. The massacre that had taken place in Qiuguang City would take place in every region of the Kingdom of the 9 States. They had to defend Nanchao City to the death. He wasn't the only one who understood this. Every cultivator who fought alongside him understood this as well. They had no reason to continue retreating. This was the last line of defense. As the commander-in-chief of the Kingdom of the 9 States Southern United Army, Zhu Xuze commanded close to 1/5 of the cultivators in the Kingdom of the 9 States. The Vermilion Bird sect had mobilized almost the entire sect, but many of their members had also perished, and it was very likely that more would perish in the coming days. He could not help but turn his gaze to the soldiers behind him. Among them, there were famous cultivators in the 9 States, as well as people he was very familiar with. Chun Xinran, Zhu Yuanzhou, Jiong Feng, Mo Hai, Lan Yan, Yang Yuan, they were all trustworthy and reliable comrades. But in the next moment, some of them might be buried in this great battle. Zhu Xuze's heart stirred, and he took a deep breath. The next battle will determine the fate of the Kingdom of the 9 States. We pledge our lives to protect the 9 prefectures. All the officers and soldiers shouted in unison. Zhu Xuze's eyes were slightly red. The enemy is very strong. If this battle, all the soldiers, we can die without regrets. Their battle intent soared into the sky like the sun, and their battle roars resounded through the 9 provinces. Nanchao City. One long-range spell formation after another began to light up, illuminating the entire sky. Heaven and earth yuan qi surged. More than 5 million cultivators frantically channeled their essence qi into the formation. Right at this moment, several thousand pillars of white light pierced through the air before crashing down toward Nanchao City. Each and every one of them was powerful enough to raise a mountain to the ground. They spread out in the sky and replaced the blue dome of heaven. Ordinary cultivators who saw this scene would definitely feel a deep sense of despair. Setting aside everything else, if those pillars of white light were to fall upon Nanchao City without any impediment, the second largest city in the gem state would most likely be razed to the ground. However, at this moment, the Dao integration stage formation set up by Emperor Changsheng was already operating at a crazy speed. At the same time, millions of cultivators infused their vital energy into the spell formation, and a series of dazzling and powerful spell techniques shot into the distance, clashing with the white pillar of light and exploding with violent booms. Earth-shattering spell techniques clashed, lighting up the entire area within a radius of over 1,000 kilometers. The earth crumbled, gale-force winds swept through the air, and destructive flames wreaked havoc outside the city. Occasionally, there would be a few pillars of light that managed to escape, but they were all kept at bay by the Dao integration stage formation. At first glance, the two sides didn't appear to have much of a difference in power. However, they knew that the real storm had yet to arrive. Sure enough, a series of crimson-robed warriors appeared on the horizon. There were over 10 million of them, and they quickly approached Nanchao City like a swarm of locusts. Their crimson robes were like blood on the ground, and they slowly spread toward the city until death descended upon this magnificent city. The Blood Tribe army had appeared. An indescribable sense of oppression began to set in. Not only that, but countless black figures began to appear in the air. As long as the cultivators looked at it from the front, they could see that the void was filled with distortions. They could not be seen clearly, and they were laughing maniacally. They were falling into depravity, and they were even singing. The melody caused people to go crazy, and their twisted and crazy postures made people feel countless negative emotions, as if they wanted to fall with them. The Void Spirit Tribe army had also arrived. Most of these off-flutters could fly, and they occupied the sky. At the very top of the sky was a vast expanse of white, and there were heavenly human tribe, powerful beings enshrouded in divine light, as if they were gods who were about to unleash their merciless wrath. Only now did all of the cultivators truly understand what it meant to have heaven and earth blotted out. They were enemies from the heavens to the earth. There was no road to heaven and no door to hell. Spell techniques from both sides were still clashing, and sparks of energy permeated the entire heaven and earth. This time, not only were the heavenly human tribe powerful beings attacking, but the Blood Tribe on the ground and the Void Spirit Tribe powerful beings in the air also sprang into action. The crimson energy was violent, and the inky black spell techniques were extremely difficult to defend against. The Kingdom of the Nine States United Army was instantly on the back foot, and the Dao integration stage formation was being bombarded relentlessly. Right at this moment, 1,000 inky black cannons suddenly appeared on the city wall. These were the strategic cannons provided by the 4-9 Immortal Sect's Purple Star Pavilion, the Ionic Collapse Cannons. Bursts of golden light surged from the cannons' massive muzzles, following which an earth-shattering boom erupted. Boom, 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 boom. Golden spherical energy cannons pierced through space before crashing into the heavenly human tribe army. The heavenly human tribe powerful beings seemed to have seen these cannons before, and their expressions shifted drastically as they hurriedly evaded the cannons. However, the cannons were extremely fast, and there was no way they could evade them. The golden cannons crashed into the heavenly human tribe battle formation before exploding violently. A peculiar light proliferated forth, and a vast number of extremely tiny particles proliferated forth, creating a series of invisible strings that caused the space around them to crumble. The empty space began to twist and warp before instantly collapsing within a radius of over a kilometer, as if the ground had suddenly caved in. The destructive power of space instantly arrived. After just one cannon blast, several dozen heavenly human tribe powerful beings were reduced to mincemeat amid blood-curdling wails. Meanwhile, there were 1,000 of these cannons in Nanchao City, and 1,000 cannons were fired. In less than 10 seconds, over 50,000 heavenly human tribe powerful beings had been slain. After one cannon blast, the cultivators' expressions remained unchanged, as if they were already accustomed to the power of the ionic collapse cannons. They continued to recharge their cannons in preparation for the next cannon blast. However, the heavenly human tribe, blood tribe, and void spirit tribe armies were not going to wait for them to recharge their cannons. Countless spell techniques instantly began to rain down upon Nanchao City again. The cultivators used their long-range combination spell formations to kill many enemies, but the spell formation protecting Nanchao City was gradually becoming more and more unstable under the relentless bombardment. What kind of power would 20 million enemies unleash at the same time be able to unleash? Emperor Changsheng's Dao integration stage, spell formation, to protect the cultivators on the city wall was not going to last very long. Right at this moment, a terrifying aura swept toward Nanchao City like the heavens themselves. The 8 Heaven Pioneer stage, great generals, hovered in midair at the forefront of Nanchao City, and their golden eyes were appraising the city down below with an indifferent expression. A great general wielding 2 swords spoke expressionlessly, as if he were announcing the fate of his enemies. Trash of the Tai Chu continent, it's time for you to retire from the stage of history. Chapter 1502. The 8 Heaven Pioneer stage, great generals arrived in the air above Nanchao City. All of their eyes were completely emotionless, and their boundless auras struck an instinctive sense of fear into the hearts of many cultivators. They were living beings who carried out the judgment of the heavens, and their presence was equivalent to that of the heavens. No one could resist the might of the heavens. At the same time, extremely dazzling divine symbols appeared on the hands of the 8 heavenly human tribe great generals, and a white light began to fall from the heavens to bless their bodies. This was the power bestowed upon them by the heavens. Energy also converged at this instant, clearly trying to break through the spell formation around Nanchao City. Humph! A cold harumph sounded. An extremely powerful aura burned and twisted the auras unleashed by the great generals like flames. It was also at this moment that Grand Elder Situ Feng and sect leader Zhu Shuza rose into the air and charged toward the 8 Heaven Pioneer stage great generals without any hesitation. Heaven-crushing vermilion bird flames. Situ Feng spread open his hands, and pure white holy flames swept forth like a tsunami over 10,000 feet in length toward the 8 Heaven Pioneer stage, great generals in the sky. Heaven-crushing 9 revolutions, leaf flame soared. Zhu Shuza spread open his hand, and the vermilion bird sword appeared in his grasp, from which crimson flames erupted for over 50 kilometers before sweeping toward the 8 great generals. In this day and age, the prefix heaven-crushing sounded like a very shameful phrase, but all of the cultivators on the city wall felt as if the heaven-crushing technique would be incomplete without it. Both of the Dao integration stage, super mighty figures had imbued their heaven-crushing true intent into their spell techniques. It was exactly because of this that the 8 heavenly human tribe great generals became extremely serious and didn't dare to underestimate the spell techniques before them. White lines suddenly extended through the air beneath their feet before quickly intertwining to form an extremely intricate spell formation. A white defensive barrier also appeared at this moment. Heaven Pioneer stage cultivators were already able to borrow power from the heavens. Their barrier was imbued with the will of the heavens, which could keep all powers at bay. Boom! The holy vermilion bird flames crashed viciously into the barrier. The heavenly human tribe great generals were knocked back several kilometers, by the holy flames, and their defensive barrier tremored violently, but they remained completely unscathed. But before they could calm down, a giant dark red sword that pierced through the sky was already slashing towards them. It stretched for hundreds of kilometers, and its sword might was vast and boundless. It carried with it a heaven-crushing true intent that could destroy all things, and it sliced apart heaven and earth in an invincible manner. Bang! The violent collision was accompanied by a sharp hiss. A crack appeared on the barrier formed by the marshals, and it was getting bigger and bigger. Hold on! The sword-wielding celestial tribe, male, gritted his teeth. Finally, as the spells clashed, the power of the crimson sword gradually dissipated. At that moment, the barrier fell off like an eggshell. One of the heavenly human tribe great generals looked up to discover a handsome man with long flowing hair standing before him. The long sword in his hand was becoming larger and larger in his eyes. The direction of the stab was shockingly his head. Marshal Ling Luo. Seeing this, the other 7 marshals hurriedly circulated their powers to stop Zhu Shuza. However, ropes formed from white holy flames started to wrap around them, trying to stop them, even if it was just for a second. The 5 great generals faltered, but there were still 2 great generals who continued to attack Zhu Shuza with all their might. One of them stabbed forward with 2 fingers, while the other slashed down with his hand like a saber. Zhu Shuza didn't take evasive measures. Instead, he was like a fearless warrior of death as his vermilion bird sword continued onward with an unstoppable force, as if he were going to eat Great General Ling Luo alive. Great General Ling Luo let loose an almighty roar as he materialized a white crystalline shield before him. At the same time, he hurriedly retreated, and his body became insubstantial. As a heaven pioneer stage powerful being, his reaction speed was extremely fast, and his body almost dissipated into mist in the next second. However, to his surprise, Zhu Shuza still didn't put away his sword to defend himself. The vermilion bird sword continued onward and instantly pierced through the white crystalline shield. An extremely sharp sword intent then struck Great General Ling Luo's glabella before quickly spreading throughout his entire body and incinerating him. Ah! Great General Ling Luo's blood-curdling cries erupted into the heavens. At the same time, Zhu Shuza had no time to evade. His chest was punctured by one of the great generals, and his waist was slashed by another great general. Blood stained the vermilion bird sect leader's red Taoist robe even more vibrant. Zhu Shuza didn't panic in the slightest as he hurriedly retreated. He looked at Great General Ling Luo, who had been reduced to a cloud of smoke amid his blood-curdling cries. It's time for you to retire from the stage of history. You useless pieces of trash who only know how to beg for help from the heavens. The Vermilion Bird sect leader's voice reverberated throughout the entire Nanchao city, and all of the cultivators were reinvigorated. It was quite clear that he was responding to Ling Luo's statement that it was time for the trash of the Tai Chu continent to retire from the stage of history. All of the cultivators felt as if they had been vindicated. At the same time, Zhu Shuza had burned Ling Luo to death within a minute, slaying one of the heavenly human tribe great generals, also greatly boosted morale. The dark clouds hanging over the hearts of over 5 million cultivators seemed to have dissipated significantly, and they began to unleash spell techniques to attack their enemies in the distance. The 7 heavenly human tribe great generals surrounded Zhu Shuza and Sitifeng and engaged in battle again. They knew that Zhu Shuza was going to fight with no regard for his own life, so they became even more cautious. Their main strategy was to keep Zhu Shuza at bay before slowly wearing him down. They unleashed all types of binding spell techniques to keep the 2 Vermilion Bird sect super mighty figures at bay. Ha 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 ha! Carefree laughter suddenly erupted in the distance. Blood splattered through the air as a terrifying aura materialized before crashing violently into the formation outside the city wall. Even when you had an army of 10 million cultivators, you were still defeated so badly. How are you going to fight us now? Become my food." A man with crimson eyes chuckled in a cruel manner. "Crap, it's Emperor Yi Deng." Some of the cultivators' expressions shifted drastically. At this moment, another pitch-black sleeve drifted over from afar and stuck onto Monarch Changsheng's formation. It swam gently like a lover's caress. In the next instant, a beautiful woman in a black cloud dress with a peaceful expression appeared at the very edge of the formation. She pressed a hand against the formation and gently patted it. Bam, bam, bam. The Tao integration stage formation tremored violently again and again. Crap, Empress Helen is here as well. Another Tao integration stage blood, tribe, mighty figure appeared, and all of the human cultivators' faces paled as they spoke in trembling voices. An extremely sinister voice also sounded. A black shooting star flew through the air, engulfing all of the spell techniques in its path before crashing violently into Emperor Yi Deng's formation. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion erupted. A hole had been blasted into the Tao integration stage formation. PFFF. Emperor Yi Deng suffered spell technique backlash from the combined attacks of 3 Tao integration stage mighty figures, and he finally threw up a mouthful of blood. It's over. Even Emperor Beixing of the Void Spirit Tribe is here. Some of the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army's morale had just been reignited, but despair welled up in their hearts again at the sight of the Tao integration stage super mighty figures. This was an instinctive fear toward power. Chapter 1503. The 3 Tao integration stage super mighty figures had forcibly broken through the formation around Nanchao City. Emperor Beixing was a ball with sharp spikes all over its body. The spikes were constantly lengthening and shortening, and they were constantly changing positions. The inky black divine light flashed alternately with darkness, making it appear as if it were a twinkling star. Its body over 1,000 feet in length trembled as it let out an ethereal laughter that was imbued with indescribable, twisted insanity. "Kukukuku, Emperor Changsheng, you old be***starred. Let's see how you're going to escape from us 3 Tao integration stage mighty figures." Emperor Changsheng didn't say anything, and a determined expression appeared on his face as he repaired the formation with all his might. He was able to unleash his full power by borrowing the power of the formation. But correspondingly, once the formation was damaged, he would also be injured. He was like a live target. As the great formation that covered the entire city trembled, countless golden particles of light floated up from the ground and then gathered in the sky, condensing into a dazzling golden divine sword that was filled with vast power. Go! Emperor Changsheng stood on the city wall before slashing his sword toward Emperor Beixing. The golden divine sword transformed into a streak of golden light, and the space in its wake was instantly sliced in half. Emperor Beixing's smile hadn't even faded when the divine sword was already upon him. Shooting star whale. A crack suddenly appeared on Emperor Beixing's ball, upon which an earth-shattering wail erupted. Ah! The wail of grief and rage was like a roar of despair, like an abyss of sin. An inky black sound wave crashed directly into the golden divine sword, causing it to falter momentarily. Not only that, but some of the wail managed to penetrate Emperor Changsheng's formation and struck the cultivators on the city wall. Over 10,000 cultivators instantly had bloodshot eyes and saliva flowing from the corners of their mouths as they clamped their hands over their ears and held with anguish. They were almost driven insane by pain and despair. 1 second later, over 10,000 cultivators perished. They had been eroded to death by Emperor Beixing's cries. Emperor Changsheng let loose an enraged roar, and a divine light that lit up heaven and earth erupted from his golden divine sword as the power of the formation surged into the divine sword in a frenzy. Ding! A crisp sword ringing erupted. The divine sword tore through the power of Emperor Beishing's cries before striking its spiky body. Ah! Emperor Beishing howled with anguish as it was sent flying for over 10 kilometers by the divine sword, and inky black blood gushed forth from its body. However, right at this moment, Helen and the other cultivators took this opportunity to attack Emperor Beishing, to attack the barrier of the formation in a frenzy. Rumble! The formation was destroyed once again. The sea of blood surged towards the city wall, causing it to crack. It was like a dam that had collapsed under the impact of a flood. The blood-colored flood that had broken through the dam surged into the city wall with a monstrous momentum. More than 20,000 cultivators were devoured by the sea of blood. The residents of Nanchao City had already begun to evacuate, but some of them didn't even get a chance to cry out before they were completely melted by the sea of blood. Bastard! Why are you targeting me? Monarch Chongsheng cursed as he frantically channeled his power to repair the gap in the formation. It was also at this moment that Empress Helen's black sleeve began to tear the formation apart. The cloud sleeve was like a roaming dragon, wreaking havoc on the city wall. All the cultivators that were swept up by it had their blood drained dry, and they were directly turned into dried corpses. Rumble! The cannon rumbled. Golden cannon blasted into the cloud sleeve, causing the space around it to crumble and twist. The cloud sleeve was also showing signs of crumbling, but it immediately returned to normal in the next instant. The cloud sleeve instantly killed the cultivator operating the cannon before taking an inky black cannon with it. Oh, so this is the 4-9 Immortal Sex ion collapsing cannon? Empress Helen looked at the cannon before her with a smile on her face. It's a good thing. All of a sudden, the inky black cannon turned red, and an extremely terrifying light erupted from it. An indescribable sense of danger instantly engulfed Empress Helen's heart. Her eyes focused, and right at this moment, the cannon had already exploded. Boom! Red energy erupted forth like the sun, incinerating everything in its surroundings. Destructive ion flames incinerated heaven and earth, and space collapsed as if it were the end of the world. Elder Zhouyu of the Purple Star Pavilion stood on the city walls with a peculiar glint in his eyes. With a faint smile, he said, "In the past decades, there has never been a person who has been qualified to steal from the Purple Star Pavilion. If you want it that badly, I'll give you a self-detonating cannon." A black shadow tore through the rampaging energy and retreated. This was Empress Helen's slightly disheveled figure. She looked at Zhouyu with a thunderous expression. "No one can stop me from getting what I want." The terrifying aura of a Tao integration stage, super mighty figure instantly swept forth. Zhouyu was struck by an unprecedented sense of terrifying pressure, but he still stood firmly atop the city wall. After deciding to join the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army, he was already prepared to die on the battlefield. Emperor Beishing tore through the golden divine sword with its spike before making a comeback. The wounds on its body writhed and squirmed as they healed at a rate discernible to the naked eye. Emperor Yi Deng's attacks became more and more ferocious. Blood trickled from the corners of Emperor Chongsheng's lips, but he still maintained the spell formation with all his might, materializing a divine sword with the power of the spell formation in retaliation. "Kukuku, it's useless no matter how much you struggle. I can exhaust you to death, even if I have to. There's only one outcome for all of you today, and that's death." Emperor Beishing cackled as its peculiar voice pierced through the spell formation, spreading for over 500 kilometers before entering the ears of all of the cultivators present. It was like a demonic voice, and all of their morale was dampened to a certain extent. It was also at this moment that the Blood Tribe Army and the Void Spirit Tribe Army had already swarmed onto the city wall. Emperor Chongsheng couldn't use the spell formation to keep so many living beings at bay at once. All he could do was keep the power that was enough to destroy the city at bay. He could only leave the rest to the cultivators defending the city. An extremely ferocious battle finally erupted at this moment. The enemy's united army had been reduced from 20 million to 17 million, while the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army had been reduced from over 5 million to just over 4 million. On the surface, it looked as if there were more enemies dying, but they all knew that this was only because the defending side had taken advantage of the spell formation and terrain. When the truly ferocious battle erupted, the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army would die faster and faster. One enemy after another flew up or scaled the city wall, and the cultivators of the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army withdrew from the long-range attack formation before drawing their weapons to face the oncoming enemies. A bloody battle ensued as blood stained the entire city wall. One returned to void stage mighty figure after another intentionally avoided their allies as they flew into the air and clashed with one another. Devastating power erupted in the sky, as if it were trying to pulverize the entire sky. In a battle of return to void stage mighty figures, the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army had a slight advantage. There were over 200 soul-piercing stage, heavenly human tribe mighty figures. Over 20 blood tribe returned to void stage mighty figures, and a dozen or so void spirit tribe returned to void stage mighty figures, but they were being crushed by the 80 or so returned to void stage mighty figures of the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army. The 4-9 immortal sect's blood pavilion was simply too powerful. There were a dozen or so holy worshippers, all of whom were at the pinnacle of the return to void intermediate stage at the very least, and any one of them could take on several enemies at once. Empress Helen was just about to join in the battle against Emperor Changsheng. However, 3 gorgeous figures had surrounded Empress Helen in a triangular formation. Empress Helen was a little dazed and disconsolate upon seeing the 3 of them. The 3 mighty figures of the blood pavilion, Ada, Jinling, and Jin Yao, were facing off against their former master. Chapter 1504. Ada's crimson robe fluttered around her as she stared at the woman in the black cloud dress with a complex expression on her face. Jinling and Jin Yao gripped their weapons tightly in an extremely tense manner. Both of them knew just how powerful Helen was. It was rumored that the triplets could unleash Dao integration stage power for a short period of time by using a special spell formation. However, what they didn't know was that the 3 of them had often sparred with Empress Helen 100 years ago, and all of them had been beaten to a pulp, and that was when Helen had held back. If she hadn't held back, they would have died countless times already. Now that the 3 of them had surrounded Empress Helen, they were clearly prepared to fight to the death. I thought you wouldn't dare to look me in the face. Helen's eyes were like bottomless black pits. It is the responsibility of the 4-9 immortal sect to defend the Kingdom of the Nine States. Ada gripped her golden dagger tightly as she spoke in a cold but firm voice. Helen burst into laughter with a hint of mockery. Don't you find it hilarious that a blood tribe mighty figure, the sworn enemy of the human race, would say something like defending the Kingdom of the Nine States? We are now members of the 4-9 immortal sect, and we have been acknowledged by the human race, Jinling retorted. Helen heaved a forlorn sigh. I don't know why you chose to side with Enlin, but now that Enlin is dead, all of you are free. So why do you still want to stay in a human sect? Staying in the 4-9 immortal sect will only result in death. If you return to the blood tribe, I can use my power to grant you a special pardon. An extremely sincere expression appeared on her face as she spoke. Come back, and I can forgive you. Ada, Jinling, and Jin Yao's expressions all shifted slightly upon hearing this. Ada paused momentarily before replying. Please give us 10 minutes to consider. Helen hesitated momentarily before nodding. All right. Thus, the 4 of them stood silently in the air, paying no heed to the earth-shattering battle taking place outside. Jinling and Jin Yao seemed to have read each other's minds, and both of them remained silent. Helen, why aren't you fighting? Hurry up and help us kill Emperor Changsheng. Yi Deng yelled in a perplexed manner at the sight of the woman standing in midair. 10 minutes. Helen replied in an indifferent voice. Eden. Deng didn't know what was going on with Helen, but the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army was already at the end of the line, so he didn't mind wasting some time and continued to attack Emperor Changsheng. Ada was quite elated. If the three of them were to battle Helen normally, they would probably only be able to last 10 minutes at most. Coupled with the 10 minutes they had to think, they would be able to buy the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army 20 minutes in total. Thinking about it, this method was very smart. Ada silently praised her own delaying tactic. However, a trace of worry surfaced in her heart. Could 20 minutes really change anything? Emperor Changsheng was being completely suppressed by Emperor Deng and Emperor Beixing, and he had to divert some of his attention to use the formation to defend against some destructive attacks, so it was only a matter of time before he was defeated. Zhu Xuze and Situ Feng were also entangled by the 7 heavenly human tribe great generals, and it was difficult to determine who would emerge victorious. As for the battlefield below, the 17 million soldiers were fighting against 4 million cultivators. If they continued to waste time, it would be a massacre. There was no hope for them to turn the tables. The people in the battle did not deliberately think in this direction. They knew that if they thought in this direction, they would only be left with nothing but despair. All they could do was fight until the very last moment, so that the human race would have fewer enemies. 10 minutes passed. Time quickly elapsed. Time's up. Tell me, what's your choice? Empress Helen asked as she looked at Ada. Ada could see that Emperor Changsheng was already completely exhausted, and he was holding the formation up with all his might. Over 500,000 of the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army had perished, and most of the remaining soldiers were also beginning to sustain injuries. 6 returned to void stage mighty figures had also fallen, one crimson figure after another charged toward the city wall. A series of twisted, inky black figures danced about on the city wall like a bunch of demons dancing in a frenzy, killing, biting, and singing. Mo Hai blasted the head of a soul formation stage blood tribe mighty figure with a single punch, and the headless soul formation stage blood tribe mighty figure's hands were still flailing about in a frenzy, inflicting a few ghastly wounds on Mo Hai's chest. Lan Yen was usually very smiley, but her expression was now as cold as ice. She transformed into a gust of wind with soul-crushing flames revolving around her sword blade, instantly slaying a dozen or so twisted void spirit tribe mighty figures. Her left sleeve was already completely empty, and blood had stained half of her robe, but she was completely unaware of it. A dozen or so sect disciples lay dead before Elder Zhou of the 4-9 Immortal Sect, but there were still several dozen people fighting for their lives around him. He watched as the disciples he was familiar with fell one by one. There was no sadness or joy on his face. He was like a machine, constantly adjusting the distribution of power from all sides. However, the hand that was commanding was faintly trembling. The outcome seemed to have been decided, but there were almost no deserters among the several million cultivators. Have you made a decision? I'm sorry, Jinling, Jin Yao. Ada gripped her dagger tightly. What are you talking about, big sister? This is my choice as well. Jinling smiled. It was the holy leader who showed us the direction of our tribe, and he taught me the true Tao of blood. Even though he's dead, I shouldn't have betrayed him, Jin Yao chimed in. An expression of astonishment appeared on Helen's face for the first time. They refused? They refused. After pretending to think for 10 minutes, they refused. Helen had thought that she would be able to recruit the 3 generals again, but the triplets pounced toward her without any hesitation. 3 pillars of blood erupted into the sky, and the projection of a golden woman appeared in the sky. There was a crimson halo on her head, and her palm came crashing down viciously toward Helen's head. Helen extended a slender hand toward the heavens to take the attack head-on. The massive golden palm fell from the sky toward the tiny palm, but it was as if it had struck the hardest object in the world, and the palm faltered before beginning to crack down the middle. However, Helen's body was also crushed into the ground, and over 10,000 blood tribe cultivators who didn't have time to evade were instantly pulverized into mincemeat. Ada, Jinling, and Jin Yao immediately unleashed their combination spell formation again, controlling the golden projection in the sky to pursue Helen down below. The battle had reached a climax, and countless living beings were dying every second. Several hundred of Nanchao city walls had already collapsed in several hundred places. Blood stained the city walls red, and the air was filled with a deathly aura. The blood tribe cultivators were becoming more and more ferocious as they fought. The void spirit tribe cultivators were unfathomably powerful. Some of the skeletons were cackling sinisterly as they continued to swing their swords through the air. Some of the more powerful skeletons were even able to control the bodies of the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army to fight. The battle was already beginning to become a one-sided affair. 10 minutes later, Ada, Jinling, and Jin Yao had all been defeated by Helen. Her inky black sleeve wound itself tightly around the 3 women's bodies, and a terrifying sealing power made it impossible for them to unleash any power. "You've lost," Helen spoke in an indifferent voice. There were a few wounds on her body, and her snowy white skin was revealed through the cracks in her dress. Emperor Changsheng, Zhu Shuza, Situfeng, and then the entire kingdom of the 9 States United Army will be wiped out. This is a fate that you can't change. Killing intent began to appear in Helen's eyes. "I had wanted to spare your lives, but it looks like you're all too stubborn, so you can all die now." Her voice had only just fallen. In the extremely distant heavens, a pleasant voice suddenly shook heaven and earth. "Invaders of the kingdom of the 9 states. Slay them no matter how far away they may be." A river of stars came from afar, traversing 800 li across the firmament. Chapter 1505. Under the scorching sun, a dazzling galaxy of stars intermingled with peculiar flames swept forth from afar, instantly covering a distance of over 400 kilometers. Its light was even more dazzling than the sun in the sky. Many of the high and mighty heavenly human tribe powerful beings who were attacking the cultivators on the city wall didn't even have a chance to escape before they were engulfed by the boundless galaxy of stars. Zhou Yu's body trembled with excitement upon seeing this. "It's the Starfire Annihilation Cannon. Our sect's strategic weapon, the Starfire battleship, is here." Over 50,000 heavenly human tribe powerful beings were annihilated by a single cannon blast. Countless cultivators looked into the distance to discover a battleship over 50 kilometers in length. The starry sky appeared to be both realistic and illusory, and it was as if the sky had been transformed into night. All of the cultivators recognized that battleship, and they were shocked to the point of confusion, then ecstatic to the point of tears flowing from their eyes. It's the 4-9 Immortal Sect's Starfire battleship. At full power, it's comparable to a Tao integration stage super mighty figure. It was once the 4-9 Immortal Sect's defensive weapon. Who would have thought that it would come all the way here? Our reinforcements have arrived. We have to hold on. All of the cultivators' morale was reinvigorated, and they attacked the enemies around them with even more ferocity. Emperor Yi Deng's body shuddered slightly upon seeing the battleship, and he was struck by an instinctive sense of fear. Perhaps it was because he had recalled the battle from 100 years ago. Emperor Beixing chuckled coldly. So what if we have a battleship? It's only going to be a little troublesome, but it still won't change your fate of being destroyed. Foolish and despicable beings suffer and weep. Emperor Beixing wailed again, and an extremely twisted power of the divine Tao instantly enshrouded an area within a radius of over 50 kilometers. The peculiar power of the divine Tao crashed violently into Emperor Changsheng's formation. Emperor Changsheng's body swayed slightly in the face of backlash from the formation, and he seemed to be about to fall, but he still managed to stand up with blood flowing from the corners of his lips. Emperor Beixing's power seeped into the formation, driving many of the cultivators insane and suicidal. Ha ha ha. Die. Trash doesn't deserve to live in this world, does it? As it slaughtered to its heart's content, the black divine light on its body became deeper and denser. The spikes all over its body trembled at an extremely high frequency. It seemed to be in a very good mood. The Starfire battleship approached from afar, and one of its cannons was aimed at Emperor Beixing. The spatial cannon exploded violently, instantly striking Emperor Beixing and sending it flying. At the same time, the void split open, and the divine fire instantly covered the sky. A phoenix mythological beast over 10,000 feet in length appeared in the sky. It gently flapped its wings, and divine flames incinerated tens of thousands of heavenly human tribe, powerful beings, into nothingness. Countless cultivators raised their heads and looked at the scene of a deity descending into the world. Before they could recover from the pleasant surprise, an even greater impact was felt in their hearts. This is a phoenix. Could it be the 4-9 immortal sex phoenix? So the divine phoenix maiden is also here. We're finally saved. Some of the cultivators even shed tears. If the appearance of the Starfire battleship had only given them a sliver of hope, then the arrival of the divine phoenix maiden and the phoenix had truly given them hope of victory. 2 Tao integration stage super mighty figures were not to be underestimated. They were more than enough to change the entire course of this battle. The 7 heavenly human tribe great generals were instantly struck by a sense of foreboding. However, the phoenix had already crashed into their formation in an extremely violent manner. Zhu Xuza and Situ Feng knew that their opportunity had come, and they also sprang into action. The combined power of the 3 Tao integration stage super mighty figures tore open a crack in the formation created by the 7 heavenly human tribe great generals. It was also at this moment that divine lightning surged and roared in the heavens. Lightning flashed, and a prideful azure figure instantly appeared before one of the heavenly human tribe great generals. Its golden eyes were imbued with a regal and proud light as the dragon sparrow sword in its hand rang. Dragon sparrow, god-slaying sword. The heavenly human tribe, great general, unleashed its power in a frenzy. However, the sword projection was unstoppable and unstoppable. The blood-curdling cries of the heavenly human tribe, great general, erupted again. White blood splattered through the air as the holy flame incinerated the great general's body. Another heaven pioneer stage, heavenly human tribe, mighty figure, had fallen, as expected of the divine phoenix maiden. Her aura is as vast as the holy vermilion bird, and her lightning strikes are like true dragons. Empress Helen spoke in a cold voice as a grave expression appeared on her face. Her inky black sleeve began to squirm as she stripped the vitality of the 3 blood tribe powerful beings before her. The 6 surviving heavenly human tribe great generals hurtled back in retreat. After a brief moment of shock, smug smiles appeared on their faces again. One of the great generals had already pulled out a white jade stone and seemed to be saying something. Divine Phoenix Maiden, I didn't think that you would appear here. What a foolish decision. You're going to personally bury the northern front of the kingdom of the 9 states. A brawny great general chuckled coldly. A female great general with a voluptuous figure nodded. What a pleasant surprise. The human race is going to fall to both the northern and southern fronts. Looks like your time is up. All of the great generals were not panicking upon seeing Su Xiaolan. Instead, they were elated, as if they had fallen into the trap, and all of them were clapping and dancing in celebration. However, it was also at this moment that another turn of events unfolded. One returned to void stage mighty figure after another leaped out of the Starfire battleship. Yi Ling wielded the divine tool that Enlin had given her again, and she was slaughtering soul-piercing stage generals in a frenzy. Su Qianyan appeared and disappeared like a ghost, and her moonlight disc was able to kill without leaving a trace. Xianyuan Cheng was able to kill wherever he went. The huge white dog had transformed into a ferocious glutton who could eat even more than the blood tribe. Not only did he eat heavenly human tribe powerful beings, but he also ate blood tribe powerful beings, and even the ghosts floating in the air. Little Goo transformed into a beautiful rainbow butterfly, and it sprinkled a beautiful rainbow powder that was imbued with a sweet and fragrant aroma. All of the enemies that breathed in this powder immediately decayed and died. Yao Mingshi and Sun Yulua wielded their immortal swords, and no one was able to stop them. Xiao Hong suddenly appeared among the returned to Void Stage, Void Spirit, Tribe powerful beings, and it swayed its vibrant red head as it sang loudly in praise of the sun. The sun has come out. I'm so happy, a sweet singing voice sounded. All of the Void Spirit, Tribe, mighty figures stared at the little red flower as if it were an idiot. Cruel smiles appeared on their faces as they pounced toward the little red flower. Such rich life, force, energy. I'm going to eat her. Don't fight. She's mine, so I'm going to eat her first. All of the returned to Void Stage, Void Spirit, Tribe, powerful beings pounced toward Xiaohong. It was also at this moment that another sun suddenly appeared above their heads. Several powerful Void Spirit Tribe powerful beings were instantly paralyzed, and there was even a return to Void Stage, Void Spirit Tribe powerful being that was slow to react and was incinerated to death by the sun. Xiaohong was at the return to Void Pinnacle Stage, and this was the reason why she dared to do as she pleased in a place where there were so many enemies. At the same time, Merlin, Cassidy, Tina, and Bai Ling, the four mighty figures at the return to Void Pinnacle Stage, were slaughtering return to Void Stage enemies in a frenzy. A one-sided battle had instantly taken place. The divine soldiers that had descended from the sky had changed the entire situation. Countless cultivators roared with excitement as they unleashed one spell technique after another toward the enemies before them. They had seen hope. They had to kill all of their enemies and survive. Humph! A cold expression appeared on Empress Helen's face, and she stopped absorbing the life force energy of Ada and the others as she prepared to execute them as quickly as possible. All of a sudden, a gust of wind blew past. A white-robed figure appeared behind Helen before pressing an inky black sword against her neck. Let them go. Chapter 1506. Who the hell are you? Helen turned to the person behind her as she sensed the cold sensation on her neck. She had just focused all of her attention on the Tao integration stage, super mighty figures, and didn't think that someone would be able to sneak up on her. What kind of terrifying ability did this require? She immediately determined that this was a Tao integration stage, super mighty figure. Don't worry about who I am. Let them go right now. The man behind her spoke in a cold voice as his evil-slaying sword glowed with a bone-chilling light. In front of Empress Helen, Ada stared blankly at the man behind Helen with her beautiful eyes wide open. Jean Ling and Jean Yao were also dumbstruck, and they instantly forgot to struggle. Jean Yao blinked incessantly as if her eyes were playing tricks on her, and in the next instant, tears began to flow from her eyes. Wah! Holy Leader, is that you? And Lin? Jean Ling murmured to herself. And Lin? He was just about to pretend to be mysterious, but why did they just say his name? Helen's body shuddered, and her inky black eyes contracted in that instant. And Lin's evil-slaying sword also fell at this instant, choosing to strike the exact moment when Helen's heart was pounding. A split second of carelessness from her enemy could very well cost her her life. The evil-slaying sword was a divine tool that was extremely sharp. Helen managed to come to her senses and just barely mustered the power within her body to defend herself. But her defenses were still instantly sliced through by the evil-slaying sword before decapitating her. Blood splattered through the air. Her head flew into the sky, where Helen's astonished expression remained. However, before Lin had a chance to do anything else, he heard 3 muffled groans erupt. The three beautiful women who had been bound by the black sleeve all threw up blood at the same time. Their bodies had been punctured by the black blades materialized by the sleeve. There were over 100 of these sharp blades, and Lin immediately activated his holy vermilion flame to incinerate the inky black sleeve. Ada, Jinling, and Jin Yao fell to the ground with wounds riddled all over their bodies. "Are you all right?" And Lin's expression shifted. He didn't think that Helen would have more tricks up her sleeve, and he immediately stepped forward to unleash a healing spell technique beside the triplets. Their vitality was extremely weak, and it was obvious that they had been tortured badly before. Coupled with 100 blades piercing through their bodies, it was very likely that they wouldn't be able to hold on. "Don't worry about us, holy leader." "Be careful of Helen!" Ada gritted her teeth and forced herself to speak. And Lin seemed to have sensed something, and he turned toward Helen's body, only to find that there was no trace of her aside from a puddle of blood. In the blink of an eye, a black shadow had already appeared 1,000 meters away. Helen's features were a little pale, and she stared at Lin with an extremely grave expression. "Return to void stage aura fluctuations, doubt integration stage power. And Lin, you really are Lin." Right at this moment, many cultivators also noticed what was happening in Helen's battle ring. Many of the younger cultivators were still in a daze, but some of the cultivators who had lived for over 100 years were trembling as they stared at that familiar figure and that familiar face. He was a legendary figure, a monster who had once dominated the entire continent's media and legendary stories. Now it was as if he had traveled through time and come back to life. Am I seeing things? And Lin? White robe, inky black longsword, and that face. There's no mistaking it, it's him. How could this be? The heavenly human tribe had mobilized all of their forces to fight to the death, and even powerful reinforcements had arrived in their dire straits. All of this was still within the realm of possibility. But now, even the dead had come back to life to help them defeat their enemies. This was way too ridiculous. Smoke was rising from the graves of their ancestors. Countless cultivators were astonished and confused. This time, even the Blood Tribe and Void Spirit Tribe were given a fright. And Lin's name was renowned throughout the entire continent, especially for the Blood Tribe powerful beings, and Lin was even more of an intimidating character. After all, Lin had once turned their holy land upside down and let a bunch of top-rate return to Void Stage mighty figures in a rebellion. He had defeated 2 emperors and several dozen return to Void Stage mighty figures in a row. Even now, they couldn't help but feel chills run down their spines whenever they thought of that monstrous feat. It can't be him. Didn't he die 100 years ago? The dead can't come back to life. A Blood Tribe powerful being yelled in an attempt to repress the horror in his heart. Emperor Changsheng's body trembled with excitement at the sight of Lin, and he was unable to maintain his composure for the first time. "And Lin, is it you?" Emperor Changsheng's voice was trembling and a little hoarse as an expression of incredulity appeared on his face. And Lin turned to look at the cultivators on the city wall with a bright smile on his face, which was like a ray of sunshine. He nodded. "It's me. I'm back." He's back. His voice wasn't very loud. However, it was clearly audible to the millions of cultivators around him. It was as heavy as a divine mountain. It really was him. He really was back. Many cultivators felt as if a ball of flames had been ignited in their hearts. The man who had created miracles over and over again had suddenly returned, giving them an extremely special feeling. It was as if they could see hope as long as he was around. After all, Lin's legendary feats were all about making the impossible possible. So he's the true sect leader of the 4-9 Immortal Sect. Sect leader Lin can even jump out of his coffin to fight. What reason do we have to back down? That's right. He's our role model. We can't let ourselves be left behind. Charge! Charge! The Kingdom of the 9 States United Army's morale was greatly boosted once again as they slaughtered their enemies in a frenzy. Charge! Even Emperor Changsheng roared with glee as he activated the power of the formation to slaughter the Blood Tribe and Void Spirit Tribe living beings on the city wall. Emperor Beixing was being held back by the Starfire battleship, and Helen had been forced into retreat by Enlin. Now that there was only Yi Deng left, he could finally catch his breath. So what if you're back? Even if you've come back to life, I can still make you die again. Empress Helen stepped forward and charged toward Enlin. The shattered cloud dress was repaired by the power of the divine Tao, and a pair of cloud sleeves pierced through space before hurtling toward Enlin at an extremely fast speed. Helen's attacks were extremely fast, but Enlin wasn't underestimating his opponent at all. In the instant that Helen had attacked, he had already unleashed his origin energy of the Netherworld, Fire God Mode, and Star Vein Divine Technique at the same time. At the same time, his eyes turned snowy white. He evaded Helen's sleeves with extremely intricate movement techniques before unleashing his Wind Sword technique to charge toward the oncoming Helen at an extremely fast speed. Helen stomped her black boots onto the ground upon seeing this, and inky black ripples proliferated forth, making the ground inky black and as smooth as a mirror. Lotus dance sleeves. She turned around, and her sleeves danced through the air like dragons and snakes as she continued to pounce toward Enlin. So fast! Enlin was given a fright, and he immediately cut himself with his sword. Chapter 1507. Crimson blood splattered onto the inky black blade of the sword. At this moment, Helen's sleeves were already flying toward Enlin with killing intent surging from her body. She was even faster than Enlin in his triple buff state. Enlin didn't evade. Streams of wind revolved around his evil-slaying sword, and at the same time his extremely powerful consciousness was imbued with his evil-slaying sword, which swept through the air toward Helen's neck. He was going to kill Helen again. Even Tao integration stage blood tribe cultivators with freakishly powerful life forces would eventually reach a tipping point, and even a god would perish once they passed that tipping point. Furthermore, this sword strike that had been imbued with the power of his blood and consciousness would perhaps be even more effective. A hint of ferocity appeared on Helen's face upon seeing that Enlin was completely unfazed by her counterattack. No one dared to look down on her in her dancing lotus state. The smooth, inky black ground that had already been assimilated by her divine Tao was her stage. She was the only scenery between heaven and earth as she danced on the stage, and everyone paled in comparison to her. She tapped her foot lightly into the ground and twisted her waist. Her black dress fluttered in the wind, and her slender body slanted to the side like a phantom. Enlin's wind sword was about to miss its target, but it suddenly changed its trajectory in mid-air. Helen's expression shifted drastically. What kind of insane reaction speed was required to keep up with her dance? "You're courting death." She harumphed coldly as her sleeves reached Enlin's back. Enlin's sword fell without any hesitation, tearing through Helen's black dress and slashing a gash into her shoulder. At the same time, Helen's sleeve struck Enlin's back with devastating force. Devastating power surged forth in a frenzy. Enlin felt as if his back had been crushed by over 100 divine mountains, and his divine body was being torn apart. Even his bones were beginning to crack from the crushing force. PFFF. Enlin's blood churned as he threw up a mouthful of blood. Enlin was knocked flying for over a kilometer. Helen turned around with a disdainful smile on her face. "What an idiot. You're planning to trade wound for wound with me? Can you afford it?" As soon as she finished speaking, she even rather provocatively used her slender finger to scratch the wound on her shoulder, and then she stuck out her tongue to lick it. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she moaned lightly, and she seemed to be rather enjoying it. Enlin crawled up from the ground, and he couldn't help but burst into laughter upon seeing this. In Helen's eyes, she had profited greatly, but little did she know in Enlin's eyes, she had already been killed in an instant. Helen was a little displeased to see Enlin's expression. It was obvious that she had gained the upper hand, but that man revealed such a wretched smile. How hateful! The tip of her foot stepped on the ground, and like a graceful swan, she once again swept towards Enlin. Her sleeves were as light as mist, and they carried the darkest and most despairing power as they enveloped the man not far away. Enlin merely stood on the spot and didn't move. Instead, he looked at her with an expression of anticipation and victory in his eyes, which made her feel even more uneasy. Helen thought back to Emperor Meng, who was still in a deranged state in the Blood Tribe Holy Land. He was once the most powerful holy disciple, but now his hair was completely disheveled, and he was constantly muttering to himself, "What is the ancestor? What is the Tao?" She knew that it was very likely that Enlin was behind all of this. Hence, her previous disdain toward Enlin was only a strategic one. She still took him very seriously in battle. So what was the meaning of Enlin's smile? For some reason, Helen felt like Enlin's smile was a little horrifying, and she swept her sleeves through the air before crashing toward Enlin like a dragon. Lotus dance, sleeves of death. Her inky black sleeves were imbued with the power of trillions of tons as they hurtled directly toward Enlin. Even a Tao integration stage super mighty figure would have their flesh and bones shattered if they were to take this attack head-on. Bam! The power of the divine Tao surged forth for over 50 kilometers. The sleeves crashed into Enlin's green turtle shell like meteorites, and the turtle shell tremored violently, but showed no signs of breaking. So hard! Helen's expression shifted slightly. The unease in the Blood Tribe Empress heart became more and more intense. Enlin could evade and retaliate, but he chose to defend in the most cowardly manner possible. What was he waiting for? Thump! Her heart suddenly began to beat very quickly. The blood in her entire body began to churn for some reason. This was a type of destruction brought about by extreme exercise and refinement. Ah! Empress Helen's face was flushed, and her chest rose and fell violently. She clasped a hand over her heart, and her eyes alternated between clear and unfocused. This power, I feel like every single cell in my body has been activated. She stared at Enlin with astonishment on her face. What did you do to me? With a triumphant smile on his face, he looked at the woman before him, whose face was so red that she couldn't even move. Do you want to understand the true meaning of life? He asked with a serious expression. Do you want to understand the true meaning of life? Do you want to truly be alive? The holy blood will give you the answer. Helen faltered momentarily before recalling how Enlin had slashed himself with his sword, and her pupils contracted drastically. So it's your blood. You poisoned your blood. No, I didn't. My blood itself is poisonous. Enlin chuckled coldly. Ah! Helen let loose another delicate cry, and her breathing accelerated. A peculiar flush appeared on her snowy white skin, and her entire body trembled as if she were resisting some kind of special power. The first time always hurts a little, but you'll learn to enjoy it in the future. Enlin offered words of consolation with a smile. Helen, Tao integration stage Blood Tribe mighty figures were no idiots, and they were naturally aware of the special properties of Enlin's blood. That type of blood was extremely pure, and it was capable of making the blood in one's entire body churn and tremble. This was the power of destruction. If one didn't die in destruction, then they would be reborn in this destruction. Ah! Helen's delicate cry was intermingled with a hint of seduction. She bowed slightly, and her long legs were pressed together as she gripped her chest with her hands. Her skin was a little moist, and she was sweating profusely. From Enlin's perspective, he could even see a pair of snowy white breasts trembling gently beneath Yun Shang's collar. On the city wall, all of the cultivators who were paying close attention to Enlin's battle were a little confused and astonished. Enlin and Helen's battle is so strange. They only exchanged a few blows before suddenly stopping. Empress Helen looks like she's in a lot of pain. Has she been cursed? Why does it look like Helen is feeling a little good? No, it should be ecstasy. What the hell is sect leader and Lin doing? Regardless of what everyone was saying, and Lin had managed to hold off Helen, and that was already a massive turnaround for both sides. The Kingdom of the Nine States United Army was beginning to gain the upper hand on both sides. Su Xiaolan stood atop the phoenix and looked down at the ecstatic Helen, as well as Lin, who wore a wide smile on his face. Even though she knew what they were doing, her lips still twitched involuntarily. Chapter 1508. What the hell? Can't they just have a proper battle? What a bunch of crooked tricks. Su Xiaolan pursed her lips with a disdainful expression. She couldn't help but grumble before continuing to chase the heavenly human tribe, great generals, on her phoenix. The remaining 6 heavenly human tribe, great generals, were no longer as calm and collected as they had been. Prior to Lin's appearance, they could still see a glimmer of hope for victory and inform the heavenly human tribe on the northern front to take advantage of the divine Phoenix Maiden's presence to crush the northern defensive line before taking over from the southern front. If both the northern and southern fronts were destroyed, the Kingdom of the Nine States would basically be over. After all, they held a slight advantage in terms of top-tier combat prowess, and they might even be able to secure victory after a fierce battle. However, Lin had suddenly appeared and held Helen at bay, thereby instantly turning the tables on them. With none of the Tao integration stage mighty figures able to provide a breakthrough point, the heavenly human tribe's chances of winning this battle were becoming extremely slim. Let's retreat for now. A heavenly human tribe great general wore a resigned expression. We still haven't completed our mission, and we're just going to leave like this? Another great general was clearly unwilling to give up. Heavenly Goddess Linyu would be even more enraged if our army were to be destroyed here than if we failed our mission, a mighty great general said expressionlessly. After a brief discussion between the 6 great generals, strange music began to play on the battlefield. The music was imbued with reluctance to part, and it was like clouds and mist before falling, like a torrential storm. All of the heavenly human tribe, blood tribe, and void spirit tribe cultivators understood what was going on. All of the blood tribe and void spirit tribe cultivators on the city wall faltered slightly as incredulity appeared on their faces. It was clearly a massacre not long ago, and it was a one-sided battle. But now they were actually going to retreat in a defeated manner. The heavenly human tribe great generals held the highest authority on the battlefield, so they weren't going to question this situation. They were just finding it very difficult to accept this reality. In contrast, the 3 million cultivators were reinvigorated, and the blood in their bodies churned as they fought even more ferociously. All of them knew that as long as they continued to fight, victory was going to be theirs. Outside the city wall, and Lin raised his arms and yelled, "Don't let them get away! They've killed so many of our comrades and citizens of the Kingdom of the Nine States, so we have to kill them all. Kill them." The cultivators were also filled with bloodlust. Originally, they were fighting with the determination to die. Now that they found a chance to completely annihilate the enemy, how could they miss this opportunity? The negative emotions from before were vented in an instant, and the target was the enemy in front of him. The 3 million cultivators all turned into ferocious men as they furiously slaughtered the enemies before them. The pitch-black ground of the city wall became dark red. Countless streams of blood flowed down the wall, and some of them even flowed along the wall, dyeing the entire wall that stretched for thousands of miles red. Slaughter, blood, and misery were still the main themes here. The battles between return to void stage mighty figures were even more intense. Regardless of whether it was in terms of quantity or quality, the return to void stage mighty figures on both sides were completely crushed. The 3 holy disciples at the return to void pinnacle stage, Cassidy, Merlin, and Tobias, were wielding weapons that were stained with Lin's blood. As long as their enemy wasn't a return to void final stage mighty figure, they would die for sure. Thus, the 16 Blood Tribe return to Void Stage mighty figures were quickly annihilated by the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army. Of the 13 Void Spirit Tribe return to Void Stage mighty figures, 12 had perished. The remaining Void Spirit Tribe mighty figure at the return to Void Pinnacle Stage had unleashed his extreme void evasion and escaped. 260 soul-piercing stage Heavenly Human Tribe powerful beings were all cut up like vegetables by the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army, especially the return to Void Stage mighty figures of the 4-9 Immortal Sect. Just Tina alone slew over 20 soul-piercing stage Heavenly Human Tribe powerful beings. In the end, there were still 20 soul-piercing stage Heavenly Humans who managed to escape the battlefield. But before they could heave a sigh of relief, a stream of starfire suddenly approached them from behind like a long river. That was the core cannon of the Starfire battleship, the Starfire Annihilation Cannon. All of the soul-piercing stage Heavenly Humans were killed amid blood-curdling cries. After the return to Void Stage enemies were wiped out, several dozen return to Void Stage mighty figures of the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army joined in on the battle. Their participation was a devastating disaster for the enemy army. One had to realize that a return to Void Stage mighty figure could flatten a mountain with a wave of their hand. Slaying hundreds of living beings with a single attack was a piece of cake for them. Several dozen return to Void Stage mighty figures joined the battle on the ground, and tens of thousands of Blood Tribe, Heavenly Human Tribe, and Void Spirit Tribe powerful beings perished every second. The situation on the battlefield was ever-changing. Sometimes the scales of victory would tilt in favor of one another, while other times the army would be routed in the blink of an eye. This time, the enemy army was beginning to flee. Su Xiaolan still remembered in Lin's words, and she patted the phoenix's back. Little Huang, activate the Great Heaven Incinerating Cage formation. Don't let them get away. Chirp. A hesitant expression appeared on the phoenix's face. It was quite clear that using the Great Heaven Incinerating Cage formation would be extremely taxing on its energy, and it was a little concerned about that. Listen to me. We have to win this battle with flying colors, Su Xiaolan said in a gentle voice. The phoenix hesitated momentarily before spreading its wings, upon which a scintillating light erupted from its body. Oh, is little Huang also born in the year of the sun? Xiao Hong was a little excited at the sight of the phoenix's extremely pure flame power. Right at this moment, countless streaks of divine flames suddenly fell from the phoenix's body. They fell in a semicircular formation over 1,000 kilometers away, forming a massive net. At a rough glance, there were over 100,000 streaks of divine flames. The streaks of divine flames exploded violently upon crashing into the ground, upon which the flames quickly spread and fused with the surrounding flames to form a gargantuan wall of flames. This wall of flames had completely sealed off all avenues of retreat for the enemy army of over 10 million. The living beings at the very back of the army had already gotten close to the wall of flames. But before they could even get close, they were reduced to wisps of smoke by the terrifying scorching temperatures. This was the Phoenix's Great Heaven Incinerating Cage formation, which encompassed a radius of over 1,000 kilometers. This was a massive cage constructed from divine flames. This cage was powerful enough to incinerate the heavens. How could the army on the ground, which wasn't even at the return to Void Stage, break through the Phoenix's divine flame cage formation? All of the Heavenly Human Tribe powerful beings had the ability to fly. Faint smiles appeared on their faces as they tried to escape through the air. After all, there was a wall of flames on the ground, but there wasn't one in the air. The flames couldn't fly into the sky, could they? However, when several thousand Heavenly Human Tribe powerful beings flew through the wall of flames at the same time, the divine flame realm was suddenly triggered by some kind of power, and the flames shot into the heavens like arrows, incinerating one Heavenly Human Tribe powerful being after another. The heavenly human tribe, powerful beings, howled with anguish in the air, and all of them were incinerated to death. This time it was the heavenly human tribe, blood tribe, and void spirit tribe living beings, turned to be struck by despair. It was quite clear that the 4-9 Immortal sect was planning to wipe them out this time. Chapter 1509. The incinerating heaven's cage of flames trapped the despairing army. Several dozen return to void stage mighty figures led an army of 3 million cultivators through the enemy army of over 10 million, and they were like tigers pouncing on a herd of sheep. The heavenly human tribe, blood tribe, and void spirit tribe soldiers didn't give up. The heavenly human tribe had a 10,000-man formation that could just barely keep a return to void stage mighty figure at bay. Aside from that, they knew that there was still hope, but that hope lay in the hands of a Tao integration stage mighty figure. Emperor Bei Xing was still being held back by the Starfire battleship. Empress Helen stared at Enlin with flushed features, and the atmosphere was quite peculiar. As for the 6 heaven pioneer stage great generals, they had already been surrounded by Su Xiaolan, Zhu Xiuza, Sidafeng, and the mythological beast Phoenix. However, they were even more devastated after seeing the dire situation that all of the mighty figures were in. What hope was there for them to win? They didn't even have a chance to retreat anymore. The only thing that they were thankful for was that Emperor Yi Deng of the Blood Tribe had also begun to flee into the distance. Emperor Chang Sheng didn't give chase. Instead, he continued to maintain the formation at Nanchao City as he had to protect the cultivators on the city as well as the residents behind him. Emperor Yi Deng is retreating. That's great. He's a Tao integration stage, super mighty figure. He definitely has a way to break out of the Phoenix's divine flame cage. Let's follow him. Hope was reignited in the hearts of all of the enemy soldiers. However, right at this moment, an extremely petite figure appeared in Emperor Yi Deng's path of retreat. Emperor Yi Deng faltered slightly before a cruel smile appeared on his face. A mere return to void stage, mighty figure, dares to stand in my way? I'll kill you as an offering to the heavens. He was already quite displeased that he had failed in this battle. Now, even a return to void stage mighty figure from the 4-9 Immortal sect was standing in his way. How could he not be enraged? Tina wielded her heart lotus ice sword, and the snowy white blade of her sword was stained with blood. You can't leave this place. She spoke slowly as her semi-transparent golden wings flapped lightly. A peculiar divine light flashed through her green eyes, and she didn't panic in the slightest in the face of Yi Deng's blood, Azura divine Tao power. Divine art, formless slash. She swung her sword and drew a white arc in the air. Emperor Yi Deng was just about to unleash a fist toward the little fairy before him when he suddenly felt a sense of peril engulfing his entire body. There was no sword projection, no vital energy fluctuations, and even the space before him was completely normal. However, all of a sudden, Emperor Yi Deng felt a tearing sensation on his arm. The snowy white blade of the little fairy had sliced open a shallow wound on his arm. Although the power was not great and it was harmless, the strangeness of the spell made him shudder with fear. Rumble. His fist fell, causing the surrounding space to explode. In the nick of time, the little fairy used a spatial leap to avoid the attack. She was a fairy at the return to void pinnacle stage, but she was panting heavily and her intricate features were a little pale. Perhaps it was due to the fact that she had expended a lot of energy just then. Emperor Yi Deng chuckled coldly. Is this what you mean by blocking my Tao? Expending a huge amount of energy and using an inexplicable move just to scratch his arm? Provocation? A show of force? What a childish attitude. A disdainful expression appeared on Emperor Yi Deng's face. If it weren't for the fact that his top priority right now was to escape, he would definitely have given that annoying fairy a vicious beating. He ignored the fairy and continued to flee toward the south. Meanwhile, on another battlefield outside the city wall, Helen seemed to have recovered, and her breathing gradually returned to normal. However, she was unable to disguise the astonishment on her face, as if she were still in a daze. She had thought that after cultivating in the Tao of blood for over 100,000 years, fusing the blood dance and the true intent of despair as one, she had already reached the pinnacle of the Tao of blood. However, Lin's blood had opened a new door for her, the true meaning of life, to truly live. Helen's long eyelashes trembled lightly, as if she had attained enlightenment. No wonder they would betray the blood tribe and acknowledge you as their holy leader. So it was because they had a new faith and goal. Helen took a deep breath and looked at Lin as if she had seen through everything. So, are you going to use your blood to tempt me next? Apparently, all three of the holy disciples of the blood tribe had become this man's servants, so it was only natural that he would try to seduce her. After all, recruiting a Tao integration stage, super mighty figure was something to be envied and envied. Helen was just about to say something when Lin suddenly flapped his wings of wind and hurtled toward her at an extremely fast speed, upon which his evil-slaying sword fell with a terrifying sharpness. A hint of astonishment flashed through her face. She didn't think that Lin would choose to attack her. This was completely different from what she had expected. A frosty expression instantly appeared on Helen's face, and she swept her sleeves through the air as the power of her divine Tao swept toward Lin like a black vortex that could engulf all things. However, for some reason, in the instant that she saw Lin, she suddenly didn't have the heart to attack him, as if even her own bloodline was rejecting such an action. There was only one thought reverberating through Helen's mind, and Lin's blood was so pure and perfect. How could she bear to hurt him? Thus, Lin charged toward Helen without any resistance. Helen tried to evade, but Lin's evil-slaying sword had already fallen. Whoosh! The divine sword tore through Helen's cloud dress and left a bone-deep gash on her body, almost slicing her in half. And Lin's eyes were filled with emotionlessness and indifference as he looked at the astonished woman before him. Tempt you with my blood? Don't even think about it. After slaughtering so many of our brethren from the kingdom of the 9 states, you're already on my must-kill list. Helen was unable to imagine what kind of expression this was. She had clearly acknowledged Lin from the bottom of her heart, but Lin had given her the coldest reply. This was the feeling of heartache. Her beautiful dress was torn down the middle by the blade of the sword, and her skin was stained red with blood as the destructive power unique to a divine tool surged through her body. And Lin had learned his lesson this time and injected an extremely powerful destructive power into his attack in order to exhaust his opponent's freakish life force. Helen didn't have time to recover from her injuries, and she immediately turned to flee into the distance. And Lin wasn't going to let her go. He had fed her his poisonous blood in order to make her lose the ability to attack him, and now was the time to kill her. He unleashed his wings of wind and Kuan Peng travel to give chase, unleashing one dazzling sword projection after another. Helen had yet to recover from her injuries, and she didn't want to retaliate, so she could only try to evade. Not long after that, a series of wounds were inflicted on Helen's back, and her injuries were becoming more and more severe.